All right, welcome everybody. Glad to see y'all here. My name is Ashley Sanders and I am from the class of 2024 last year. So just a year ago, I was in y'all's same position, getting ready to start this program, not knowing what to expect. So today we'll be setting a foundation for you guys on what the program is all about and some of the important points to the class and the sessions and volunteering and just different opportunities that are available to you guys. So I did want to show you guys a video here. And it is really going to show you guys what it means to be a Texas Master Naturalist. And I hope y'all enjoy it as much as I did. But
If I was to tell people about the Master Naturalist program and why they should become Master Naturalists, it gives you a chance to be that little kid later in life. You get to do the things you wanted to do as a child, and you get to do things that you were curious about and learn from a lot of other people.
You find people that are just like you, that love to be outside, they love nature.
I find that really amazing to see this group of people that are really like-minded folks that just love what they do.
Right now, the Master Naturalist is what is my passion. That, and I am an naturalist addict.
You're going on a hike and you see a bug and everybody stops to take a look at this bug.
It changed my life in a way that just expanded my mind.
You see scat and everybody stops to take a look at the scat.
You can find your niche, find what interests you, find where your passions are, and you just go do it.
Something sparks in every person, and it's different for every person.
And then I discovered the insects and the flies. I became what I call a fan of the fly and just kind of went haywire from there.
The camaraderie, the people are great. I love them. Our hearts are all aligned in the same place, and that's been another great aspect of it all.
I've made some really good lifetime friends.
Well, I didn't expect to find a community of friends and mentors, and the community that I get to be involved with and the work that we do for our community is awesome. Our volunteers are known to deliver. We show up and we deliver.
We're at Critchfield Preserve and we're going to set up an acoustic stationary monitoring for bats.
I believe in the Master Naturalist program because we teach conservation, and that's very, very important.
For me, it's a learning experience. I have learned so much, and then it's people.
We have some of the most amazing members who have such incredible backgrounds who are so giving.
The like-minded people are the absolute best part of being a Master Naturalist. I meet professors and journalists and environmentalists.
The importance of the knowledge that we gain through the Texas Master Naturalist program to me is critical now more than ever.
It heightens your awareness of the challenges that we face, and at the same time you think, well, I'm doing a little bit. The hopes is that we continue in the mission that we have now. The ability to let each chapter use the resources and the people that come in there that bring this wealth of resources to improve their community. We need to be out there with people who don't all look like us or talk like us. I think we're bringing them aboard and we're doing a service to the community.
What we're doing is great work. What we do is a good thing.
so that our state continues to be the wonderful state it is and has all of the biodiversity, everything that we have here. We want to keep that for future generations.
All right, so today, first we'll go over some of the important points to the class and the requirements, and then we'll go over some nature journaling. With a lot of today's technology, sometimes I can't hear you. Okay, we do rely a lot on different apps, but it's really important that we have a good foundation for just getting out in nature and being able to record that without all of the fancy technology. But then we'll go over some of the historic naturalists. That will be from the textbook. And then we have Melissa will be going over how to record your hours in the VMS system. And then we'll have some fun, a fun icebreaker activity for you guys. So I just wanted to share with you guys who is a part of our chapter board. So we've got Lisa Houston as our president. Gerald Geisler is our vice president. Adrienne Paquette is the secretary, and Andre Hauser is our treasurer. I know Lisa is here today, so please give her a warm welcome. And then we also have some other members that are really important for keeping the chapter going. Jaden Kelly is responsible for advanced training. So if you have anything that you see that's not on the calendar that you would like, that you think would be a good opportunity for additional training, you can reach out to him, and we'll have the contact information for them is available online, and we'll also make sure that y'all get these resources from today's presentation as well. Annette Banks is our new communications director. We have Melissa Schubert, who is in charge of membership and the VMS. Brenda Reeves for outreach. Shelly McCoy, who's here today, she's with our training class. And another point today, we will be asking for a volunteer to be the representative of you guys as the training class representative.
To the executive board.
To the executive board.
The board, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
It's the board.
Okay. And then we have Kay Browse is in charge of volunteer service projects. So if you see volunteer opportunities that might be beneficial to add to the calendar, you can reach out to Kay. And then Terry MacArthur is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to water resources. So we will also, we do have some other, we have the Texas Water Specialist Program that you can also get additional certification for as well, and we'll have information about that. For the training committee, as you can see, a lot of us are recent graduates of the program. We have Stephanie. Stephanie's here. We've got.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Let's turn on the lights and have the training members.
Yes,
stand up,
please.
So you can see names and faces together.
Virginia, Kim, Janet, Shelley, Michael, who is not here today, and then myself. All right, so these are the requirements for graduation, initial certification, and continuing certification with the program. So to get to graduate, you will first need to complete 40 classroom hours of the initial training, and that will qualify you for your polo shirt, your lanyard, your certificate, and your official name badge, like these here. And then to as far as the requirements for the
You have to press the button so you can get number 1 on 2. Yeah.
Okay, so all of the classes will be offered as hybrid, both in person and through Zoom, except for a few that are that are Zoom only. Some of the field trips might not be offered for Zoom as well. There are going to be 13 classes that you can attend in person, and we would like for interns to attend at least 9 in person of the 13. And if for whatever reason you have challenges getting to the classes, please make sure you're communicating with either your mentor or the training team. There are a total of 61 hours offered for initial training, but only 40 are required to graduate. So any additional hours of the initial training that you complete, that will count towards your advanced training. And then the next part would be to get your initial certification. And that means you've graduated, you've completed your initial 40 classroom hours, but you've also put in 40 hours of volunteer service, as well as 8 hours of advanced training. And then you would get your Dragonfly pin, your initial certification Dragonfly pin. And then in order to double certify your first year, you would have to complete that, both the graduation, the initial certification, and then an additional 40 hours of volunteering, an additional 8 hours of advanced training. And that would get you this year's unique pin, which is the Greater Roadrunner. And then going forward, each year to recertify, you would just have to do the 40 hours of volunteering and 8 hours of advanced training to get that year's unique pin. And so how are you going to find out what volunteer opportunities are available and what advanced training opportunities there are? There are a lot of resources available for you guys. If you go online to our Heartwood website, we do have a calendar that shows a lot of upcoming events. And everything is color coded, so you can easily identify what is a volunteer opportunity and what is advanced training. We also send out a bulletin and newsletter. So you'll want to make sure that you go online and sign up for that. And then we also have monthly chapter meetings. So those are initially the first 30 minutes or so, we discuss chapter business, and then we'll have a guest presenter that will do a presentation, and that will be a bit of an advanced training opportunity.
Don't be daunted by the numbers. 40 hours goes very quickly. You'll find. I mean, I was nervous as all get out. But
yeah, it is possible. I work full time. I know everybody is in everybody has their own circumstances, but I did. A lot of us have double certified our first year, so it is definitely feasible. So these are the links for signing up for those, and we'll make sure you get these. The presentation is going to be online, so you can rewatch it. And then we'll send out important links and resources for you guys. So you'll want to get into a good habit of recording your hours, and you do have a time limit for putting those hours in, and we'll go over that more in detail, but this is what the VMS, how you get to the VMS system from our website. And then you can also access the chapter directory, which Kim was taking y'all's pictures earlier. And we will have more opportunities to get your pictures taken if you didn't get it done today. You can also show off your love for Texas Master Naturalist by getting your personalized license plate. And there's also a lot of swag you can get online, whether it's t-shirts or other goodies.
once you certify, you get a shirt.
You do, but yeah. And then another fun event is the annual Master Naturalist Conference. Each year it's in a different location. Last year it was in San Marcos, and I went and had a great time, and I hope to see you all in College Station this October. But it's a fun few days where you learn a lot, and they have some field sessions, but you get to really meet a lot of other chapters and see what everybody else is up to, and what projects everyone's working on, and just a lot of learning opportunities. So
There was a question.
yes.
Does if you go to that annual conference or meeting, does that count towards advanced training?
So there are advanced training sessions, so those would count, depending on the type of session that it is. Some of the field sessions are more of a field research opportunity, so it just depends, and they make note of what type of session it is, but. Were there any?
Go ahead.
Were there any other questions about what we've gone over so far? Yes.
Do we get hours for going to the chapter meetings every month?
So you get volunteer hours for the chapter business portion, and then you get advanced training hours for the presentation portion of the chapter meetings.
And how long do those usually last?
They're usually about an hour, hour and a half. Depending on when you get here, we welcome everybody to show up early and mingle. And then we do about 30 minutes of chapter business and then about an hour presentation.
We need to pay chapter dues, or is that part of?
So chapter dues are not required from the interns. That is the fees that you paid for the class covers your initial year. Dues will be need to be paid for your following year to maintain your status within the chapter.
This book is about Robin Malkimmer is a botanist, and she has written this book is, and I don't know how many of you read it, but part of it is like a nature journal, and part of it is native mindfulness and native ideas. And so this quote is from this book. It seems to kind of congeal what we are as naturalists.
So next, we're going to have Kim up here.
This is an idea of nature journaling. There's a little bit more information.
And really, I'm gonna do this part, but Terry MacArthur is our nature journaling specialist. So we decided last year, Terry has done a field session, and we're so glad you're here. She's taken people out, but it was toward the end of our schedule, and the feedback that we got last year from our interns said, hey, I would have loved to have known about nature journaling early on. So we wanted to give you a quick introduction to it, so you can be thinking about it, starting to identify a journal that you want, and then that can be with you throughout your training time as you're having field sessions with us, as you're going out in your own backyard, as you're going, out and taking a hike. We wanted you to be thinking about being observant in nature. So we don't want to steal your thunder, Terry, but we wanted to just work it in as an introduction with the orientation so you guys can think about it. But if you take a look at the pictures that are up here, you can have a variety of journals. It can be a plain journal that you purchase. It can be something that you print out and create. There's a lot of templates online just to print some pages and you tie it together with a ribbon. And then what you put in it can be as simple as this one in the center, or as elaborate as taking some watercolors with you into the field and making detailed notes. So you're going to reflect your own personality in your nature journal. You'll go to the next slide. There are some tips to get started. First of all, get your journal and get some supplies. Is it a pencil? Is it some colored pencils? Is it some watercolors? And then keep it with you, keep it in your car as you're going out and just kind of sit and observe. The apply, I notice, I wonder, and it reminds me of, think about what you're seeing, sit quietly like the braiding sweetgrass, just sit and reflect in nature. How does it make you feel? What are you observing? What are you hearing and smelling, as well as seeing? So engage all of your senses. Next. And then really slow down, but don't spend too much time on it. Don't say, oh, I have to go nature journal. You know, just make it a fun, relaxing activity. And the tip is to start maybe small, 10 to 15 minutes at a time as you're starting with that. And, you know, just have it handy. You can do it in your backyard. It doesn't have to be a big outing, but we encourage all of you to get a nature journal and make it part of your practice. And it'll be interesting to see if you start soon, you know, look back on it a year from now with your Master Naturalist journey and see what you've learned and developed and saw. So that's nature journaling. Also, I want to tell you, there is a book up here that Virginia from our training team brought that is all about nature journaling. So I encourage you to come up and take a look at this during your break. And Virginia, you said that he has a YouTube page also?
Instagram account, John Your Laws, he's fantastic. That book is about how to teach somebody to journal, but you can learn from it yourself.
All right, so that's what I wanted to say about nature journaling. Back to you, Ashley.
All right, so next up we have Gwen Lanning here, fellow Heartwood chapter member from the class of 2010. And she's going to cover the topic of our historic naturalists in Texas.
Okay, my name is Gwen Lanning and I have been a master naturalist since 2009. And some of my story will come out during the presentation. What I'm going to talk about today is two things. First, we're going to do the historic naturalists of Texas. So this is how we got to now. What is our history in Texas as far as studying nature? And then my second talk is about the land ethic, and that's sort of the present and the future actions we can all take. You don't have to remember the details of this. There is a lot in your manual, and I'm going to try to make it memorable, but don't stress. If you don't remember, that's okay. This is just the big picture because you're going to have weeks and weeks and weeks of filling in details. So I'm going to start, let's see. All right. We all have memories that are important to us about nature. And I'm going to share some I've heard over the years from people. This was a guy named JJ, and he said his family grew up in Louisiana, but they would take their boat and go across Caddo Lake, and that always struck him as the most beautiful place he could imagine. And this was from a guy named Bruce. And he said the first time his father took them hunting, they didn't bring rifles. Their dad just wanted them to watch the deer and learn their ways and learn where they would be. And they never went after a trophy buck, just does and calls for food. And this is from a guy named Brooks who said he was 8 years old and he was a Boy Scout. He was from an urban area and they took him camping, and they got up the first morning and they went out and they saw deer and they didn't know what they were. So they ran off the pathway, and he said, that's when I discovered bull nettles. And this is from a guy named Danny who said, if you are 8 years old and you find a box turtle, do not try to kiss it because they will bite you. So all of these stories are from guys that are inmates at Huntsville State Prison. So besides this class, we teach a class over there, and I've taught there for 7 years. And so you'll see later when I teach over there, the monitor that they watch is really, really small. So I have a lot of big simple illustrations that I have made to communicate well over there. This is one of my favorite memories. This is Smith Oaks. Has anybody been there? Yeah, it's a rookery, and you can go and see the snowy egrets and the roseate spoonbills nesting and raising their young. Their young falling out of the nest and being eaten by turtles and alligators. So when I was there one time, what you do is an island, and then there's water in the way, and then you've got like bleachers that you sit on across, and this roseate spoonbill flew right up to me and let me get really good pictures, and I will always remember that. The reason I teach this part of the class, I don't have any background in the sciences, nature, nothing, but I worked at George Ranch for most of the 90s, so I've lived in the 1830s, the 1890s, and the 1930s. So we're going to talk about some of the first naturalists. We're going to go through history. We're going to kind of time travel. And of course, the first naturalists here were the Native Americans. But we don't know a lot about how they lived. We have to depend on later accounts and then even later archaeology. Your book has a really good chapter about the different eras, the Paleo Indians, the Archaic period, the early historic, and I think it's very readable to pick that up. And the other thing I always do if I have to learn something is look for a kid's book. So Texas Parks and Wildlife has a whole series of coloring books, and they have one on the Indians of Texas. And so they show about the different groups and how they lived. So when we get to Spain taking over, about 1519, we have a long period of Spain owning Texas and exploring a little bit. So the first guy we're going to start with about 500 years ago is Cabeza de Vaca, and he was part of the Narvaez expedition. And so what they did was they set off, I think they had 6 ships, 600 guys, and they immediately lost ships, split up, did all these things, and they ended up, as far as we know, they came in about Tampa Bay, Florida. They couldn't find the harbor they thought was going to be there. And so Narvaez said, well, half of us are going to go ashore and we're going to look because we know there's gold and we know there's riches. And Cabeza de Vaca was like second in command. And he said, I really think we should stay with the ships because, that's our only way to get home. And Narvaez said, well, you can if you want to, but I'm going. And so Cabeza de Vaca said, well, because of my honor, I will go with you. So about half of them got off and started going inland. They said they told the ships to find the harbor and we'll meet up with you a year, whenever we meet up with you. And the ships ended up finding what they think is Tampa Bay, waited a year and went back without them. The people who went inland, it was just horrible. They had no idea what they were doing. They kept running into little bands of Indians. They would say, where's the gold? The Indians would go, oh yeah, it's at that next town up the river. You just keep going, you'll find it. And after a while, they realized they really couldn't travel on land. They were going to try to make boats and follow the coastline. They realized this is so refreshing to me because we always think we're so specialist, we don't know how to do anything. None of them knew how to do anything either. They had to figure out, well, if we kill the horses and we take their skins, we can make a bellows, and then we can blow a fire hot enough to melt down our armor to make things, and we can make some boats and some axes and, make ourselves some boats. So they did that, and they set off in 5 boats with 50 people in each boat. They said that the water was just like a hand span away from the top of the boat. And of course, they ran into hurricanes, they got separated, never saw each other again. Eventually, Cabeza de Vaca and a few guys ended up in what they think was Galveston. And then they spent like 4 years pretty much being enslaved. And, they had no clothes, no shoes, they're just working, doing whatever the Indians said. Then he somehow got credit for being like a medicine man and healer. And he started trading and traveling through more of the Southwest. And he eventually made it back to Mexican Spanish community. And then he went back to Spain. So he got here in 1527. He didn't write down what happened until 1540. And so, he was running into all these different groups of Native Americans. And he wrote down what he thought their names were, but people have not been able to really match it up with what we know from later. So we don't know, did those groups just totally disappear? Did he just misunderstand what they were saying? Because after all, he went through so many areas and there were so many different languages. Did he not understand? But what we do know about early American life in this part of the world, we learn from him. So when he was traveling, this would have been a plant book. The plant books were herbals, and mostly they were telling you, here's a plant and this is what it's good for. And they were big on received authority. So they might be quoting something that Aristotle had said 1,500 years, 2,000 years before, and they just handed that down as this is what this plant is good for. This is one of my favorites. This is what they had about even animals. They viewed them as what good are they to mankind? And so this one was like, well, if you take this beast's skin, urine, gall, and cods, and then make a garment of the skins. It's good for a paralytic person. The skins burned with dry onions and liquid pitch stayeth the bleeding of the nose, and being put into the soles of the shoes easeth the gout. So good for everything. So when Cabeza de Vaca, he talked mostly about different groups that he stayed with for a long time, and the foods that he mentioned were like mulberries. These are Mustang grapes and common persimmons that they could have eaten. He talked about them going to the area of the prickly pear for 2 months and eating like just prickly pear tunas, drinking all the juice, drying the tunas, and living off of that for a couple of months every year. So there's a prickly pear. And then he also talked about honey mesquite and pounding that to make flour. And he was the first person to talk about a bison. And he said it was like a cow, only it tasted better and fatter. And you're like, what were Spanish cows like? Because we think of bison as being very lean. So after his time, of course, more and more expeditions from the Spaniards came through Texas. And one thing I thought was really interesting was that in the 1540s, their leader was the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. And he actually called a council and they actually said, should we be doing this? Do we have a right to go in and take over these lands? And then they decided, well, some of the people have already converted to Christianity, so it would be cruel to leave them without our guidance. So they kept coming. They did not leave a lot of information. Fortunately, at one of the conferences, Master Naturalist conferences that I went to, TxDOT had a booth and they were handing out these big books that they had published for the anniversary of the Old Spanish Trail. And so they drew together all the Spanish narratives that they could find. And these are some of the expeditions that came across. So you can see every few years the Spaniards would kind of come up here and check on what was going on. And they mostly did something like this, like we were at San Isidro on the Hondo and we saw trees and live oaks. we crossed the Hondo, we passed a ravine, there were thorny bushes. They were still looking for gold. They were still trying to make sure the French were not sneaking in. So they did not do a lot of nature study. So science always followed the political frontiers, and this is just in case you don't remember all your Texas and American history. This is the years that Texas changed hands. The manual that you had, when I joined in 2009, it was 95 pages of naturalists that we all need to know, and 5 or 7 on a page, and it was just huge. The manual now has really simplified that, and they want to commemorate those people who added to the knowledge that we still think is important today. So we're gonna jump from 527 to about 1827. And this is a map from 1819, and you can see that it was still very inaccurate. Lots of mountains in Texas. So zooming in, 1816, sorry. This is when they built the Erie Canal. So science and technology, where we were at this time, steamboats had been invented, and in 1807, they had the first commercially viable steamboat. So by the 1830s, about a lot of steamboats were coming down the Mississippi, and everybody I'm going to talk about came here by steamboat. Came down to Galveston or Indianola. So this is where we were with trains. This was the first, the Rocket. This won a contest in England, and then in America, we had the Baltimore and Ohio with 13 miles of tracks for horse-drawn carts. People still didn't know if they were going to go with a train. And we still didn't have germ theory. So there were, of course, this was typhoid, cholera. To me, I don't know the difference between them. They just thought it was caused by bad air. And in some of the journals that I've read from these explorers, they would say, well, we were out all night taking locations, geographic locations with the stars, and we're fine. But they were still kind of worried if you were out at night, you might get sick. So this was a very, very busy world. We had Napoleonic Wars, we had all kinds of stuff going on. But when expeditions came to Texas, they would send someone like this. These are my AI illustrations. I saved you, I did not show you the ones with 3 hands on that. But these are real. When I was first thinking about sending a naturalist on an expedition, to me, that seemed sort of extra, sort of like, did your budget cover that? But I did not have an understanding that they didn't really have chemistry. So in the 1800s, they were still relying on plants, animals, minerals, all natural materials for things like food, fiber, medicine, spices, dyes, gum. If you think about gum Arabic, making glue, you make glue from horse hooves, but other fasteners, they still needed plants for all of that. And it was very, very important to them. So they were always looking for what's out there, what can we use? And they collected them. They dried them, and they're still, what they collected is still important to us today. This is an example that shows that the birds on the left are all from about 1900, and the ones on the right are from about 1970. And it's because they had coal-fired factories, and it made everything sooty. So we worry about pollution, but we've got different pollution. So how the system worked was usually somebody at an institution would decide that they're gonna sponsor somebody on an expedition and they would set it up. And they would try to get subscribers. There's my, look at them, aren't they amazing? All lined up. And the subscribers would pay about $40 or $50. Yeah, and I've got later how much money that is in today's world. And then they would send out an intrepid collector and they would have a nice camp in the woods and they would botanize, collect skins, snakes, whatever they could get. And then they would send it all back. So the collectors didn't really know if they had found a new species or something. They had to wait on somebody else to go through all their samples, match it up to what was already published and go, yeah, I think you got something new. So for the logistics, the things they had to bring, their basic equipment was very simple. Just some clippers, a vasculum to hold everything, and the drawing paper. But they had to have wagon or mules to get around, and wagon and arsenic for preserving the animal skins. And it had to be special paper to absorb the fresh plants, and then stiff paper for once the plants were dry, and a plant press and copper containers. And they did not have Tupperware. And we have nice little guidebooks that if we don't know what we're doing, if we have no idea what a plant is, of course, we have iNaturalists now, but we can still look up and go, it was a purple flower, and go, yeah, that was my flower. They studied ahead of time, and their books look like this, with maybe 6 color plates for pages and pages and pages of Latin description. And they would try to learn this all ahead of time. They didn't have a way to even communicate color. So this is one of my favorites. This was in the 1790s, I think, a German guy came up with a way to describe color for minerals. And then this is 1821. Someone said, well, I also need to describe it for birds. Also for like gangrene. We need to know how to describe that. So they would have this, and it's just very poetic. It has like, oh, this is the green that's the color of a mallard's eye, or this is the green that's found on a certain butterfly. So when they got to a place like this, they had to be familiar enough with the plants to go, are these different plants? Did I collect these plants yesterday? And they had to sort them and then press them. And then again, the press, not that big a deal if you're at home and you can stick it in your barn or something, but if you're trying to be transported, it quickly becomes very bulky and very troublesome. Also, they didn't really know the area, of course, so they could go, well, what a great camping spot is this? And then wake up and it's like this the next day. And then you've got the whole nature of wildlife is that even though there were probably more mammals around back then, they're still hesitant to be around man, so they would hide. And then you got bats that are flying at night. So they would have to depend on finding tracks and nests. These are turtle eggs that something else found before they hatched. Tracks. This is with a lot of bone fragments in it. Poop. This is one I found. There's not a lot of pictures like this on the internet, surprisingly, and they think that this is a skunk that had cleared out a beetle nest, an underground beetle nest. And so what they also did was wherever they went, they tried to hire people to shoot things for them. They were mostly working with dead specimens. So here we are back in the 1816 map, and the first person I'm going to talk about is Jean-Louis Berlandier. A lot of these people fit a profile of being someone from Europe or the East Coast of the United States, that they were educated, but maybe they didn't quite fit in, and they were single. And so when an expedition would come up, people would unanimously say, you're the one who needs to go. So he went, Jean-Louis Berlandier was from Switzerland and got sent over here when Texas still belonged to Mexico to do a boundary survey with them. Oh, I hit the wrong one. Okay. And so he did these drawings that we're going to see. He was there as a botanist and zoologist in 1827, and they were going to look for the boundary between the Sabine and the Red. So he had 55,000 dried plant specimens. And they crossed at Laredo and they went up to Bayard, San Antonio, and they came through to Navasota. So he stopped at like Holland Creek, which I cross all the time, and he had malaria. And from there, they decided the best thing for him to do was to go back to San Antonio. So he didn't get further, but he sent 55,000 specimens of 2,320 plants back to Switzerland. And De Candolle cataloged them and said, yeah, you got even more than you thought, but you really weren't a very good return on our investment. And word got back to him in Texas. And so he stayed. He never went back to Europe. He stayed here. He lived down at Matamoros and he married a woman from there. And he worked as a doctor, and he continued to make observations all his life. And so, like we were talking about the nature journaling, this is some of what he did. When he died, his collection, his widow didn't know what to do with it. And an Army officer bought it and then resold it to the Smithsonian. And he was also very interested in all the folk ways of the Native Americans. He realized things were really changing. So these are just some of the things he put in his nature journal. This is the AI, which I think is pretty amazing. I love it. Astronomical, barometrical, cyanometrical. I didn't know what this was. It's how blue is the sky today. Meteorological, air temperature, rainfall, underground temperature, and even more. So these are some of his plant samples that he collected. And I just love the one on the left. It says it collected it between Laredo and Bayard. So we could all go back and find that today and see if it's still there. And some of the things that are named for him are the Rio Grande leopard frog and the Texas tortoise. Okay, so now we're going to jump forward a little bit more. We have the Texas Republic, which Mexico did not really agree with that decision. So they were still sending people to study too. And then Texas got annexed to the US in 1845. So we had the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. So then they sent out a boundary commission starting in 1849. Trouble ensued. There were part of it from San Antonio to El Paso, they did in 1849. Then in the 1850s, we'll get to that. So by now, this is 1833. This is a map that shows the leagues, and the impresarios were given control over areas, but they didn't own it. They were promised, like, for every 100 acres they got a settler to take, they would get 5 acres, something like that. And so this is about that time, what we were looking at. So this is a reconstruction at the George Ranch, and then that's the Anson Jones house at Washington on the Brazos, which is from about 1840, 1850. But that's what Austin looked like. So Charles Wright was another one who fit this pattern of being an Eastern trained scientist. And he came here, he'd been here for a while, and he started communicating with Asa Gray of Harvard. So this is Asa. This is how he's living in 1848 compared to our little dog trots and everything here. And so Asa Gray got Charles Wright position on an 1849 expedition from San Antonio to El Paso. And at first, so we have all of Charles Wright's letters. Asa Gray kept them all, and they're all online. And so if you don't know, my favorite website is archive.org, and all of this primary sources are there, and I sit and read this stuff, and I am old enough that I can still read cursive. So I read these letters, and Charles Wright said, oh, well, it's going to take us 3 months to go 600 miles. I can't believe we're going that slow. That's going to give me plenty of time for botanizing. It's going to be great. And of course, it was not. So this is how you would cross a river where it was settled. San Antonio. This is the camp. They ended up, so they started off at San Antonio and they went as far as Dehanis, I think, and then they could have gone up, but they stayed straight. They went to the Leona, the headwaters of the Leona River, and they camped there for several weeks. But during this time, they would have weeks of rain. They'd be mired in the mud. That's further in West Texas. And poor Charles Wright, they had arranged for him to have transportation for himself and his supplies, but they never arranged for him to have food. So the common men that were like, well, you can't eat with us. We don't have enough as it is. And the officers were like, oh, sure, we'd like to help you. But if we do, we have to help anybody who comes along and asks us for food. And of course, he couldn't buy anything. There was nowhere to buy anything. And so he wrote many letters back to Asa Gray saying, like, if you had just given me a horse and wagon of my own, I could have brought my own supplies. It would have been great. I have money in my pocket, but it does me no good. I can buy nothing with it. I sit uninvited and see others eating, and it is a severe trial to my feelings to thrust myself among them. The men have their ration and often none to spare, and how I am to get along to El Paso, I know not. Sleep all night if you can in the rain, and walk 12 or 15 miles next day in the mud, and then overhaul a huge package of soaked plants and dry them by the heat of the clouds. I have been taxed enough to cry or swear when thinking that I have the pleasing prospect of being dependent for 6 months on a parcel of men who call me a fool and wish me at the bottom of the sea. So he thought about going back to San Antonio, but he kept on. So for him, he was sending these plants on spec. He sent them back to Asa Gray. Asa Gray would have probably his grad assistants, I guess, if they had those, catalog them. They would divide them up and then send them to these subscribers. So Wright was getting about 10 cents a specimen, which would be $4 in our money. And then the subscribers were getting between 400 and 800 specimens. One of the letters is like, he's saying, okay, when you send that collection, I forgot the collector's name, when you send that collection to Dr. Lanning, you don't have to send him everything because he really hasn't paid up. And I don't mind a little deception. And we'll just tell him that this is everything I got, So to me, they were getting a pretty good bargain. What they were paying per plant was pretty much often less than what he was getting. So at this time now, it's 1852, the first passenger trains are getting from the East Coast to Chicago. And in St. Louis, they are bound and determined that they are going to have a railroad from St. Louis to the Pacific, and they have 5 miles of track west of the Mississippi. And this is what the trains look like. So the government and all the different sections of the country were jumping on this train thing. They were all determined. Well, some people, like Daniel Webster of the dictionary, was like, anyway, Daniel Webster, he was like, what are we gonna do with all that land that's good for nothing? We don't need to do anything with that wilderness out there. But a lot of other people wanted to send the railroads all the way west. They want them to jump off at Fort Benton, Arkansas, or St. Louis, or further north. And then we conveniently had already run the survey from San Antonio to El Paso. And there were people in California, so we just need to run it now from El Paso out to California, and then it would be perfect to have a train down here in the South. So there were all these different factions who wanted different train routes, and so Congress appropriated $150,000 to survey within 10 months 4 different routes. They decided not to count San Antonio to El Paso. We had already done that. So again, it was just total chaos. All the different surveys had the one down here from El Paso had 4 commissioners assigned. 1 died, 1 was drunk or something. 1 took the position and then gave it up. And so they finally got a bookshop owner to come and be the commissioner of this expedition. So they come with 100 guys. They go to El Paso and they get there in November, and they decide to winter in El Paso and then set out to do the surveying in the summer. Because, that made sense. But all these, there was just so much dysfunction, quarreling, killing people, embezzlement, all of these different things, administration changes that would come and go. Whatever you decided, we're going to switch it around tomorrow. So I get a lot of comfort reading these things because it's like, okay, they survived, even through all the negativity. But the really good thing was that on these expeditions that they made, they couldn't even judge the grades and curves needed for the trains. They didn't have time to do that, but they did all the botanizing and the ornithology and the mammalogy and fossils, and they talked to the Indian groups. And so they published a 13-volume report, which is all typed, and it has these beautiful pictures in it. And Charles Wright was on this second arm of the Southern expedition. And so from going to where the beaver will stop gout if you put his skin in your shoes. By this time, beavers had almost been extirpated because of wanting their fur. And then fortunately, somebody decided silk made a better top hat than beaver fur. And that saved the beaver. And by this time, 1852, the expeditions would say that beaver skins were being offered to them for a quarter. And, they could just watch the beaver colonies in the rivers and stuff. But so I love how they write about this one. And talking about his teeth. In disposition, he is mild and inoffensive, and it is but with difficulty he can be induced, even in self-defense, to use his dental chisels. So these reports, they didn't just write on what they found, but they again drew in everything that had been published so far and would say something like, so-and-so says that this is 2 species of salmon, but I think they just change seasonally, or, this mammal has been reported to do such and such, but we found it to do this. So it's a great source of information from what they had available to them too. So for Charles Wright, we remember him with the goldenrod and a tick seed and many, many others. Fortunately for me, in 1940, Asa Gray took Charles Wright's collections from 1849, 1851, 1852. He just kind of threw them all together and sent them out to whoever was the subscriber. But in 1940, someone very painstakingly went through all the accounts and said, okay, this is what he collected when, and this is where he was. And they wrote notes, because if you go back just to the 1800s, there's things like, well, we were at the San Pedro River. We don't have a San Pedro River. We have a Devil's River. And so the name changed. And they would say the Puerco River. We have the Pecos River. They would say we were in Frontera. Frontera was a one compound a little east of El Paso, and it's not there anymore. So in 1940, this person wrote all the notes, or I would have never figured out a lot of this. All right, so then we get to some people that did not follow the pattern of being sent by authority. They were more gig economy type guys. So this is Lindheimer, and he was in Texas. He was German, and he came and he again was sending things to Asa Gray, and he was getting $8 per 100 plants. And he did get his own wagon and mule and a couple of dogs and a shotgun, and he would just go out for a couple of weeks all around New Braunfels and collect on his own. And then he helped settle German communities. So he would, of course, being German, he would get visitors from Germany. So this one guy came and said, like, well, here, I'll give you a set of what I've collected, and you give me a set of what you've collected. So, okay, fine. So the German guy went back to Germany and cataloged it and published it. And Asa Gray was like, hey, I thought we had an exclusive deal. I was going to publish it, but he never published it till 1907. So Lindheimer kind of got a bad reputation among some people for a while. And his house is still in New Braunfels. So we have the prickly pear. Okay. So this is 1891, coming closer to our time. And you can see by now where the railroads have really gotten across the eastern part of Texas anyway. So this is one of my favorites. She was in my version of the manual. She's not in yours, but I think she's really important. Her name is Mary Sophie Young, and she was a professor at UT. And in the summer, she would go out collecting, usually around Austin. But one year she wanted to go out to West Texas, and they said she couldn't go by herself. You know, women can't travel by themselves. And so another professor there, B.C. Tharp, had a younger brother who was usually in trouble. And he's like, well, I'll send Carrie with you, and then he'll keep you safe and he can study his math while you're out collecting. So they came out to Marfa, and by this time, she did not know anything about harnessing mules. She bought these little donkeys that it was promised that they'd be easy to handle, but of course they weren't broke. They probably weren't old enough to even pull anything. And so by that time, Marfa Courthouse was there. And this is what she was wandering across. She'd go up and she'd just have an apple for the day and wander and find her way home. And these are some of her plant samples. So why we know her is she kept a journal. And so she died very young. She died in about 1915, I think. And about 50 years after she had gone, B.C. Tharp, the professor that was Carrie's big brother, took her journal and published it in the Southwestern Historical magazine. And I've read the whole thing and it's just amazing. Now, it was 1915, so there are a few racist things in there, but overall, she was funny. So she talked about that they would have to go, they would try to buy food from the ranches, or they would shoot this jackrabbit and try to eat it. And like this one, she says, well, you could cook the juice. You could soak it all night and chew the juice because it was such a tough rabbit. So also at this time, women were wearing these beautiful decorative hats. And that brings us back to the Smith Oak rookery that, of course, it would have had even more birds, and people were killing them in order to decorate these hats. They didn't just wait and pick up fallen feathers. They didn't even wait till nesting season was over. They just go kill as many of them as they could. And then women would walk around with a dead bird on their heads. So this lady, Florence Miriam Bailey, when she was very young, she started being an activist against that. So like with the earlier people that I've talked about today, I don't know what their attitude was toward the nature stuff. You know, if they felt like plants should be conserved or animals should be conserved, or if they were like, use them all up, I don't care, I'm just reporting on what's here. But Florence Miriam was like, we need to stop this. And so one of the things she did, she published a book that was, oh yeah, she still was dealing with this as a color thing. She published a book where you could look it up as a lay person and go, it was a red bird and its head looked like this. What was it? And so she did birding through opera glass. People weren't buying binoculars. They just, and if you think about it, opera glass, you can't see anything really. And she would go out during the day on a horse and just sit the whole day and look at the life history of these birds and what she could observe, what they were doing. And she got people to watch the birds instead of kill the birds. And she married Vernon Bailey, who's very important also in Texas nature studies. And they would come out here in the summers and camp up high. They never had kids. They would let a lot of people come in, students come to their home and stuff. So when I look back, I sit there on archive.org and when other people are watching Yellowstone or whatever is trendy, I'm reading something from 1830 or 1850 or something. So one of my favorite books is from the 1830s, and it was someone who came here, he was scammed out of his money. People were on the East Coast saying, oh, if you give me your money and then go to Texas, you can just pick the land you want and it'll be yours. So you give me your money here in New York, and when you get there, they'll honor this. And so he got here and realized he wasn't going to be able to buy anything. But he wrote really good memories of his travel, or accounts of his travels is the word I'm looking for. So he was down in Galveston with camping with some people, and this is back in the black powder days. You load one musket ball and you wait 30 seconds to load again. And he thought he would help the people he was camping with by sneaking up on roosting birds at night and shooting them for breakfast. And he said, when he did the one shot, they just all took off. And it was just such a cacophony. He couldn't breathe. It was so many birds. And so he went back the next day with the people, and they were like, well, first of all, those birds aren't good to eat. And they just saw how every branch was covered with the birds. So we have lost that. We don't ever see that many together. And we wouldn't know that if it wasn't for the people like this that wrote down what they saw and their feelings about it. So these are some of the books I recommend. This one by Dr. Geiser talks about some of the naturalists in greater depth, and it's from the 1940s, 1950s, I think. Women in the Field is about women kind of now. I think Mary Sophie is in there. And Frontier Naturalist is about Berlandier. And then, so I have like 5 slides of my sources. And for people who like sources, I did print out those, or you can email me and I can send you the ones that you have the links. But just so you know, I have everything. So that's all of that. Okay, is that good? Any questions? Okay, so we can have another break and then I'll do the next one. Shelley tells me I need to clarify when I talk about the manual I had when I started, that's what everybody had. It was a big binder full of Xerox sheets. No picture, no color pictures, black and white, miserable Xerox sheets.
A binder about that then.
Yeah, and we liked it fine.
Kelly, the lights that are up here, I said, switch back there for that, leave it all.
Okay. All right, so in your manual, this is the first chapter, but to my mind, it always makes more sense to talk about the historic naturalists first and see where we've been to understand where we are now. Why isn't it going? Okay, I'm pushing the right thing. It doesn't want to go.
Put the mouse first and then make sure the mouse is in there.
Okay.
Is it working?
Okay, all right. A couple years ago when I was giving this talk to an intern class, right after I was done, some very CEO type A type said to me, well, what is the point of all of that? And I was just like, oh, I never knew there had to be a point of learning something. I just like to learn stuff. So this is my favorite quote from Z. Frank. And if you haven't seen him on YouTube, you need to. He's on there. So why do this part of the talk? About 16 years ago, I got to move up to my husband's family property. So I live in the northwest corner of Montgomery County on a place they've had since 1962. That's what it looked like when they moved in. And that's what it looks like now. And then our family also has property in Edwards County. And that's what that looks like. And that's also what it looks like. So the Texas Master Naturalist mission is to develop a core of well-informed volunteers to provide education, outreach, and service dedicated to the beneficial management of natural resources and natural areas within their communities for the state of Texas. So the more we know about our communities and what's beneficial for them, the better we can do our job. So when we look at the different regions of Texas, we all have a favorite. I think Jaden told me last year I left a tallow tree in this picture, like just to see if you're paying attention. Down at Aransas, Galveston, Carnales, Blue Hole, Rock Springs, South Rim, Guadalupe Mountains, North Plains. But whether we're urban or rural, nature is around us, even if we're in the most urban areas. So Texas has, according to the 2023 population, 30.5 million on 171 million acres. So 83%, they say 83% of the land is still rural. I think we all feel like, no, it isn't. But 86% of the population lives in the urban areas. Unlike a lot of the other Western states, we don't have a lot of federal lands. 95% of Texas land is held in private hands. Large ranches are being broken up into smaller properties, and evidence of that. About half the landowners of rural property are absentee landowners. Again, I qualify. Of the people who are in the rural areas, less than 1% of them actually own land there. They're living out there, working, living in a small town, but they don't really own land. So when we think about managing land, good land management, even if you're not a landowner, it's still important to you because you want better wildlife habitat, better grazing land, and the ability to withstand drought and flood. Some of those cities like San Antonio are buying up big conservation easements so that they can keep their water pure for their city. So even if somebody that lives in San Antonio never owns an acre, how that land is managed is still important to them. Less susceptibility to plant and animal disease, less susceptibility to erosion, more productivity, and more beauty. So these are the different ecoregions of Texas, and you're going to have a whole lesson on that. But beneficial land management looks different in the different regions of Texas. But whatever, when we're trying to think, well, what does that mean? We're pretty sure that this is not it. So this is a little 7-acre piece that was right across from me, and the people bought it and cleared it like this overnight, dug pits and started burning the trees in the pits. And a landowner from our neighborhood went over and said, "What are y'all doing?" And they said, "Oh, well, we're a Louisiana company. We're going to clear pipelines, bring the trash in here and burn it here in these pits."
Oh my.
But that is not legal in Texas. It is not legal to bring something from another property onto a property and burn it. And so we had a meeting, we wrote them a nice letter that we're aware what they're doing, it's not legal. They sold the property and now some people, other people live there. And, I know I'm seeing huge areas now being cleared for neighborhoods, and people need a place to live, and we need a place to dispose of the stuff we don't want. But thinking of this particular land, that was not best practice. We can't do best practice everywhere all the time, but we need to know what it is so we can do it where we can, when we can. This is not best practice either. This was my house in Sugar Land, and yes, it looks very nice suburban house, but nothing's native. The crepe myrtles aren't native. We had a Bradford pear. We did have a conveniently located bald cypress that then threw its knees up into the yard. So of all the native trees to pick, that's not one for a neighborhood. When we moved in, the house had been empty for a year. And the first letter we got from the homeowners association was, "You need to get the weeds out of your front yard." And the weeds were evening primrose, wildflowers. So when we're looking at healthy land, we're looking for diverse native flora and fauna populations that are sustainable long-term. In the Master Naturalist program, the two basic goals of beneficial land management are diversity, variety of species, and variety within species, and sustainability, using a resource without depleting or permanently damaging it. When I used to teach, I used to tell the kids, like, if I walked in here and you all looked exactly the same, I would be freaked out. If I look at a flower bed and every flower is exactly the same, that seems a little freaky. We like diversity. We like things to be different. So this is sort of getting into your nature journaling and learning more. And also when we go back to the old naturalists, it says in the book, like, we study them not just to honor them for what they did, but they're examples for us now. So this is our place in Edwards County, and we're looking, we've got game cameras up all the time. So the first thing to know is, on this land, who is here? Is there diversity within the species? Are they healthy? How do they relate to each other? Is it a predator-prey relationship? Okay, this picture was on the still cam, and at the same moment, the video cam caught the little spotted skunk. So if we just had the still cam, I would have never seen the skunk. I like to Photoshop. Who is here that maybe looks harmless, but really shouldn't be here? Those are aoudad. They're African sheep, goat, not either one, but they populate like crazy. And these are axis deer, same thing. And of course, we have our favorites, feral hogs. So these are all creatures that were brought here, but they can overwhelm the resources, the native plants, and they can remove habitat that birds need and things like that. And even this, again, it may look healthy, but most of that grass is King Ranch blue stem. And so it's not from the King Ranch. They brought it from Africa, and it has spread, and you'll see it on roadsides all over Texas. And it stops. We normally would have bunch grasses that are good for quail, and the King Ranch, the KR blue stem, just spreads and chokes everything. Who used to be here, but they're not here now. We have black bears again at Big Bend. My daughter studied them for her master's degree, and we have javelina at Big Bend, but they're not all through the state like they used to be. Our population's changing. In my own house, where I've been, when I first got there, we saw these green tree frogs all the time. And now I don't see them anymore, but I see the Mediterranean geckos, which I had in Sugar Land, but I didn't have up here. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a cyclical thing or if it's one causing the other. I don't know, but it's something to be aware of. All right, so when we think about looking at places around here and trying to judge how we can tell what's healthy, what's diverse. An ideal 21st century native habitat would contain a diversity of healthy, sustainable native plants that have historically lived in the area, including grasses, forbs, and woody plants, and it should be free of pesticides and herbicides. And it would be home to a collection of native animals, including insects, reptiles, birds, small mammals, herbivores, and the populations of animals should be sustainable long-term and free of any exotic plants or animals. So here in Texas, we are so lucky because when I read books, I think y'all are going to hear about Douglas Tallamy and his books. On the East Coast, there's just tons of places that look very healthy and green, but when you get down to it, they're full of Russian olive, some invasive rose, just a few plants over and over. We still have lots and lots of native plants around here and a lot of diversity. And so one of the reasons that we study the historic naturalists is that we're following in their shoes. This is a quote from the manual. Before the current trend towards specialization, in which scientists tend to know more and more about less and less, professional scientists were naturalists in a broad sense, characterized by knowing something about the whole of nature, generalists. And so as volunteers, that's a field that's a role we can all step into, whatever we can do and add so that the specialists can specialize and study what they need to study. That's where we can help. And there's different skills, just observing, looking at life histories, experimenting, evaluating, and teaching others. So this is my place, and I'm showing this because this is a hay pasture. So it's not perfect. It's Bermuda grass. It is not native plants. And we get hay off of it once or twice a year. And then we have the pond, and it's got good edge habitat with trees, and we've got pine trees. So one of the first things we can do is just observe, and that's kind of my thing. I'm a very broad but shallow when it comes to my knowledge. I like to know what something is, but beyond that, I'm not really like, oh, and then where does it overwinter and what does it eat? And I just like, once I've labeled it, I just move on. So these are some of my observations in iNaturalist. And some of them, like up at the top, the little crabs, if you go down to the coast, you see those everywhere, but only 300 people have ever put them into iNaturalist. Sometimes when something's common, people don't look at it. And then this ties into the journaling too. These are phenology wheels, which I see a lot on Instagram and YouTube, some of those are really complicated, where people did all the phases of the moon and whatever they're tracking through the whole month. I printed up some, if y'all want them, that are monthly, that came from the Montana Historical Society or Nature. So looking at what you might see, like, okay, there's a big world out there. Maybe you don't have a lot of time. Maybe you don't have a lot of space. And Melissa will tell you, these are all my pictures. I cannot count these as volunteer hours taking pictures on my own place. But there's a thing a couple times a year called the Citywide Nature Challenge, when they ask everybody to contribute, and I live in the area, so those I can count. So this was, 2020, when we all got to stay home all the time. And this was in just 1 hour of what I saw that day: a Western honeybee, a wolf spider, and these are her babies that she's carrying on her back. An insect nymph on a coreopsis, a bullfrog, and a minnow, but I didn't catch the minnow. Spicebush swallowtail, zebra longhorn beetles on a thistle, a little wood satyr. And then another time, so that was all just within 1 hour. Another time, in that same hay pasture that is full of Bermuda grass, it also has this hairy vetch growing in there, and the insects just love that. So I would just sit there on a milk crate and see what I could see in 10 square feet. So there's the Western honeybee again. This is a southern carpenter bee. It's a male. He's light with green eyes. And then there's the female, and she's all black. And then this is a robber fly eating, I think, a Delta flower scarab. So I love robber flies because they try to make you think they're bees, except for a bee is always busy and a robber fly is always sitting there going, what? I didn't do nothing. And then you look at it and it flies off. This is a calico pennant, a gray hair streak. emerald flower scarab, recurts blue, and love bugs, and a snake skeleton, all within about 10 feet. Oh, and I should also say, before I was a master naturalist, I knew none of this. I knew a pine tree, I knew oak tree. I did not know if a yaupon was a good plant or a rare plant. So I have learned a lot over the years looking at stuff. And then when life histories, we have a barbecue with a smoker, and one day I opened it and this nest was in there. So then I just checked on it once a week. And I was worried that these babies would not develop well. But I happened to get them on the day they flew. And there it was, it's a Carolina wren. They were all fine. And then we can see things go through their different stages. Here's the cicadas metamorphizing. I did not know there was more than one kind of cicada. And I think I've had 4 or 5 just on my place. So there's a lot. This is a cocoon. It's a polyphemus moth. And I had to get that picture of his antenna. And then this is how I know my husband loves me, because he'll bring me stuff. So he's like, Gwen, I found this grub in the compost heap. Do you want it? So I kept it till it hatched and it turned into an ox beetle. And it turns out like you cannot look at a grub and know what it's going to be. You just have to wait till it changes. These are dragonfly nymphs. And this is a blue dasher, which is a very common dragonfly, but what I loved was getting in and seeing like his battle scars. He'd been into some stuff. And then looking at how do these creatures relate to each other? This is a wasp and a spider. Who is going to win this battle? And the wasp did. So this is another one where, okay, oh, that blue heron, I saw it with this fish and I was like, there's no way it's gonna get it down. It did. So then later, I saw this blue heron with this fish. And so we have like, our pond is like an acre. We don't have catfish. We didn't put catfish in the pond. And the bird could never get it. So I went over and walked in the mud till I got this poor beat up dead catfish and measured it. And it's pretty big. Yeah, he gave up. Another time I was walking and under a tree, I found a whole bunch of feathers. And then a few 10 feet away, I found another whole bunch of feathers. And then under another tree, I found another whole bunch of feathers. And I was like, do birds molt all at once like that? And I went back and looked and I found a claw. So Fish and Wildlife Service has a feather atlas online where you can look at your feathers and match up. And so what they said was that it was a broadwing hawk, and reading one of my old bird books where they did look at life histories, one of the guys kept a great horned owl tame, and then it attacked a hawk and ate it. So I'm guessing that a great horned owl is what got this broad-winged hawk. And then we always have to think about our decomposers. There's a little dung beetle doing its work. So if we want to think about best practice, if we think, okay, they said we should have the plants that used to be here, the animals that used to be here. Well, we used to have a whole lot of buffalo, and we used to let prairie fires sweep through and clear everything out. We've got 30 million people here now. We can't do that anymore. So in the 1950s, am I right, Terry? 1950s, Sandel. Okay. although Leopold had worked as a trapper and he killed this wolf and he got down to her off of his horse as she was dying, and he thought, what right did I have to do that? They were here before we were. They own this mountain as much as we do. And it really changed his life. And so then he bought a piece of property in Wisconsin that he thought was the worst piece of property he could find, and he set out to restore it. And he wrote tons of articles through the years. And then he wrote this book that Terry will have you read. But his thing, and he was writing in the 30s, 40s, 50s, was that we don't have to change everything we're doing. We just have to direct it. And so the same things that have helped us settle and survive can be used to help us maintain the land and conserve the land and restore the land. And so the axe, cedar, ash juniper is native, but it's been allowed to just go crazy, and it can stop the rain from hitting the soil and soaking in, and then it affects the rain table. So it does need to be cleared in some places. Cows are fine. You just have to, if your land is very fragile, it's better to have them be on small areas and move them often and give the land time to recover. But like for me, we have a big pasture where they just come get the hay. We have a little pasture that the cows are on, and they're my neighbor's cows, so he moves them. They're not there all the time, but they're pooping and putting nutrients back in where they're eating, so that they're not just, whereas hay is just pulling off whatever nutrients were in the soil. And then burn, you can have controlled burns. I got to be seasonal ranger at Big Bend National Park when I was in my 40s. And we did controlled burns every summer. They would have crews come up from Mexico, and they would pick a plot and go through with flamethrowers to reduce the load. Because if you're at Big Bend and it catches on fire, it's a long way to get out of Big Bend. So they would try to make it where it wasn't going to be highly flammable. So, and then exotics, exotics can be hunted year round, and they are delicious. So the role of the Texas Master Naturalist is to begin their studies of the natural world found here in Texas and continue their study of nature by delving into these elements, all the while keeping in mind the interconnectedness of the natural world. And I love this little quote from a song, 7 years old. I know the smallest voices, they can make it major. I hear sometimes like, well, as a master naturalist, just pick your thing and just study that. And no, you don't know what you need to know. When I was teaching, before I was a master naturalist, I worked in a very rich school. And one day, and I was known as the animal person, so one day a bird hit the window and conked itself out. And they came to get me, like, what do we do? And it came to, and so the mom and the kids that found it said, hey, can we take it home and try to make it better? And I was like, okay, sure. And she said, what do you think it is? And it was a pigeon. So that is the level of people we have to be able to answer their questions and communicate with and draw them in. That somebody who's in a very ritzy neighborhood, well-educated, doesn't know something that basic. So I learn everything, and I just learn different things every year. And so this is just some of the interesting things I've seen. This is a short-tailed shrew. I thought it was a mole when I found it. These mammals are venomous and poisonous. So it can inject poison into whatever it's eating, or if your dog gets it, your dog will get sick. And it has a very high metabolism. I have found a couple alive and one dead. I think maybe owls get them and then drop them is what happens. This was 2023. It was pretty droughty, and this bat we have a couple little bats, but this was the biggest bat I've ever seen, and it was flying around our pond. And even naturalists, my pictures weren't great, couldn't identify exactly what species it is. And then we have, pine trees, and they die and they get a hole in them. And so you look up and you think it's little bark tufts, but it was actually the owl. And I didn't know they could do that with their ears to kind of blend into the tree. And then this roadrunner just came up on my porch one day. And then one day, this mockingbird was jumping up and down on my chicken coop. I could see it from the house. It's like, what is going on? Well, there was a big old rat snake trying to get in the coop. So I have those a lot. I'm trying to train them. I throw them in a wheeled trash can and take them out into the woods and dump them. And I'm like, don't come back. But it hasn't worked. So this snake, looks like a big old mean snake, and it's only that big. And then I just love looking at things close up. I don't have very good vision myself. So to take a picture and then be able to blow it up on the computer and see all the details is just amazing to me. And then this turtle, he's missing his back leg. Something happened. And then just looking again at the details, these little bold jumping spiders with their metallic fangs. The crab spider that has a pattern of a crab spider on its back. And then the fish flies, the things that hatch out and just appear, and looking at them closely, they just look like Dr. Seuss creations. Just looking at the dragonfly in their eyes. It's a great blue heron, but we never see them from that angle. We don't see them straight on. All right, so this bug is nothing special, but I'm going to close by, I'm going to read part of, I wonder if I can, on my phone. There's a blogger I just love. His name is Chris Helzer, and he works for the Nature Conservancy at the Platte River in Nebraska. And so he blogs under Prairie Ecologist. And he always finds to me very creative ways to talk about stuff. So I'm going to read part of one of his posts. So he had, this is my own picture, but he had a picture of a really nondescript beetle on a sunflower. And he said, I have no idea what kind of beetle this is. It looks like a pretty nondescript black beetle, doesn't it? I bet it's not. I bet it has a life strategy that would knock your socks off if you knew about it. And then he says, I can't promise you that the beetles shown here have a story that's as good as the oil beetle. That's a pretty tough act to top. Not every beetle produces larvae that cluster together and produce a chemical that smells like a female bee. Those larvae hop on the male bee that comes to investigate, transfer themselves to a female when the frustrated male actually finds a real one, and then ride the female back to her nest where they attack and eat her babies. Not many species are going to match that story. Still, I'd wager real money that the life story of the nondescript looking beetle is a really good one. Okay, and I've got one more. That one was not a beetle, but this one is. This other beetle reminds me of the silphium weevil, another beetle that lays its eggs on sunflower blossoms. However, I doubt the beetle from these photos follows the silphium weevil's example of girdling the stem beneath the flower before laying eggs on it. You have to admire that strategy though, because when the flower eventually falls to the ground, the larvae can hatch and burrow directly and safely into the ground where they overwinter. That helps ensure more food for the weevil babies. It would be really neat to know that our beetle has that kind of strategy, but it probably doesn't. It has its own unique and mesmerizing approach to life. This would be a great time to tell you that I've been leading you on, and I'm now going to reveal the identity of these beetles and its captivating life story. Unfortunately, I've been completely honest with you, and I don't know that story. Maybe someone will, and they can share what they know with us. That would be awesome, and we could all revel in yet another example of the incredible diversity found within life strategies. With so many insect species in the world, we have yet to discover many of their identities, let alone their life history. We just don't have enough scientists studying invertebrate, which is really odd given the remarkable and appealing attributes of creatures like these beetles. So what I'm hoping you'll take away from this is, like, whatever you're interested in, just follow that path, because it's all going to lead you to something just as interesting, something just as incredible that we all would have said, I would have never thought of that. And if you told me this was a true thing, I would have said, sure. So as you're thinking about best practices and land ethic, maybe someone who's a landowner and you can kind of help them make decisions, but we're all needed to, I do have more slides. We all need to take responsibility for the health of the land and try to understand it. When we abuse land, we see it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we may belong, we may use it with love and respect. So things you can do are to document your observations. I know you're going to hear about so many of these projects through the course of this class. There's an Adopt a Loop project where you can put your observations at Huntsville State Park, and there's nature tracker projects. I know Craig is doing a whole session, and he usually does iNaturalist, but there's also the phenology center that is starting a Texas activity where they just want us to track 8 plants. These are some other things that, working at parks, helping on the trails. This was a study I did, helped with at Big Bend they were looking at the native Big Bend slider. And then when people release their pet turtles into the water, what happens? And then always pollinator gardens. A lot of you guys, we were there last week at the Stewart Library. And then this is planting at Lake Livingston with the plants that are grown at Ellis Unit, and then the high school kids plant them. And then just this is pretty much the number of species I've gotten here in Montgomery County. And then people ask what kind of camera I have. So it's just a digital bridge. So if I was standing on a boat and take that picture, I could zoom in that close. And it also does little things then, which is very helpful for me. And then these are my resources. I have 5 pages of resources for the other one and only 1 slide for this. So I'm on iNaturalist as Textile Ranger because I'm really a quilter and weaver. So that's why it's textile. And in theory, I have a blog at littlewildstreet.com, but it's very neglected. So, okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Still a lot to see at Little Wild Street, though.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Native grasses in Montgomery County. I know we say what's not a good option, but what would be a good option?
Pretty much any of the blue stems. I know what I have occurring naturally is bushy blue stem and broom sedge blue stem. Are you going to have plant people, Lisa?
I think so.
Talk or?
We do have a plant session.
Yeah. I've got a little Indian grass, rosette grass. I mean, really, at least the Bermuda doesn't take over. It's in the hay pasture, but it doesn't try to get anywhere else.
Yeah.
So everywhere else is still whatever was there. Okay. All right. Do I have to do anything to take it out or just take it out?
Take it out.
Okay.
With somebody.
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
What have you done? Do you use macro for the insects? A macro lens?
No, I don't have a special macro lens. In theory, my cameras do it, but mostly I'm backed up and I just take 100 pictures to get a good one. And because it's so bright outside, I can't really see what I have when I'm outside either. So. I'll leave those there for now in case somebody wants them.
So we did just discuss land ethics, but we did want to bring up somebody to talk real quick about water. We have Terry MacArthur here. She is very familiar with the flora and fauna of our Woodlands area. She has lived here since before the Woodlands was the Woodlands. She is a founding member of the Heartwood chapter 20 years ago. It is our 20-year anniversary, but she is also very passionate and a big proponent for water as a natural resource and a proponent for proper management of the waters that we have in Texas in our area. And we have a separate certification that you can get that coincides with your Master Naturalist certification. And we'll have a class about that specifically later, but it's possible to go ahead and get started on that now. So we just wanted to have Terry give a little brief introduction on that.
You know, before I talk about water, I love all the references that Glenn made, but if you are interested in a more contemporary book about comparing and contrasting some of the people who have studied nature in the past, there's a book called Natural Magic. The author's name is Berlander. I think it's Renee Berlander. She compares and contrasts Darwin's writings and poetry to Emily Dickinson's. They were on separate continents, writing, both of them from deep in their hearts about the nature they observed. But it's a fascinating read. I'd encourage you to read it. So.
Again,
Huh?
the title again.
Natural Magic. I'm pretty sure it's Renee Berlander. So water is such a big topic. I think you're broken down into 3 or 4 classes that all deal with water, different aspects of it. But as we are in the piney woods rather than along the Gulf Coast, we're studying freshwater systems here more than the saltwater systems you would study if you were in a chapter closer to the coast. Nonetheless, water is a big topic. So you may be aware that Texas Parks and Wildlife has a program called Texas Waters Specialist. It's an actual certification program. I mean, they send you a nice certificate and you get a nice pin that says you are one. If you do just 8 hours of training on the curriculum book, wait a minute, I think I brought one. That Parks and Wildlife puts out is called Texas Waters. It's, I don't know, 10, 12 chapters in here. All these years, you can look at it later. But it's just 8 hours of training. So quite a while back, I talked to Melissa Felty, who manages that program for Parks and Wildlife. And I said, why aren't more master naturalists involved in this? So I started doing the classes. Still doing the classes. We've recently moved those training classes to W.G. Jones State Forest in the classroom building, which limits the number of people that can access, because after about 25 folks, it's too crowded. But it is a relatively easy way to learn more about water resources in Texas and get a really nice certification. The reason I partner with Parks and Wildlife for this won't apply to you directly, but it's almost impossible to sign up directly with Parks and Wildlife as a volunteer if you're not 18. And my personal feeling is this is important enough that we really need to draw our high schoolers into this and get them thinking about the environment in a general way, and a great gateway to that is water, because everybody needs water. So, I invite high schoolers to come to the water classes that I do. I take their hours report because they can't really report them into Parks and Wildlife very well. And Melissa Felty sent me the template, so I give them the certificate. She sends me a bag full of pins a couple of times a year, so I give them their certificate. But I'm here to tell you that that looks so good on their college application resume, that they took classes outside, got a state agency certification. And then the way you keep your recertification year after year as a water specialist is just to do 10 hours of volunteer service. And guess what? For master naturalists, those training hours count toward the water specialist, but they also count toward chapter advanced training. Those volunteer hours count towards recertification, but they also count towards volunteer hours as a master naturalist. I mean, what could be a better deal than that? You report your hours in training or volunteering, and you tick a box that says, yes, this applies for water specialists. So we have a lot of fun. The in-person classes that I do that will begin in February at Jones in the classroom are all 3 hours long, 8:30 to 11:30 on a Saturday morning. Some of them conflict with classes. I'm sorry. You know, there's just too many things going on in the world for us to have free time to do this that don't all conflict. So some of them conflict, but I've scheduled them February through May to help speed along that process. I've also scheduled some 2-hour online sessions that I'll do on Zoom. If you sign up and say, I want to attend water specialist classes, then I'll invite you to the online classes. Those are all 2 hours. They're on the fourth Monday with rare exceptions because of a holiday or something, from 3:30 to 5:30. I know, I can't make everybody have a convenient time, but that's the most convenient time for high schoolers, 3:30 to 5:30. So yes, I do cater to youth, especially I try to cater to high schoolers, but it works out well for the rest of us too, pretty much. So I brought along just a couple of sheets. If you will, you can pass them around back through your rows there. If you're interested, you can sign up using that QR code. You'll be in my list, and I'll start dinging you and reminding you when classes are both in person and online. And when there are volunteer opportunities scheduled that do qualify for those recertification volunteer hours, but they also qualify for volunteer hours for master naturalists. So, I didn't see Melissa. Oh, there she is. Melissa will tell you. Tell you that Melissa Felty told me that last year she had to disqualify 3,000 reported hours for the water specialist because in the description box, someone would write They worked on invasive species, but they didn't write the words water-related activity to protect local waterways. That phrase in there about it's water-related is how she determines whether or not on the water specialist side, the hours count. So if you have questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions. Melissa is happy to answer, Melissa is happy to answer questions. If you're interested in the water specialist program, but have questions, I'm here. So I'll be here the rest of the day. If you want to talk to me, please do. And read Natural Magic.
Thank you.
I'm leaving this here if you want to look at it.
Thank you, Terry. So next we are going to do a little fun activity to get you guys up and moving and talking, to get to know each other a bit better. It is a bingo sheet, so we encourage you to find others in the room, whether they're interns or chapter members, training committee, that can sign off on your bingo sheet.
So it's a 5x5, 25 different things. There's a lot of people in this room that will qualify for more than one thing. And I think there's somebody in this room that will qualify for every single one of them except for one I'm not for sure about, but we'll find out. If you get a bingo, great. Otherwise, just basically wander around, try to meet some people, have them sign your little sheet, and we'll see at the end who got the most.
All right, did anybody have a bingo? No, that's awesome. Who had 25 squares filled? Oh, God. 20 squares filled. 15. 18. We got 18. Anybody more than 18? Woo, that's great. You did a good job. Did anybody find anybody that was a snake? Yes. Yay! I had no idea if anybody would have a pet snake, but I just thought it'd be fun to find out. What kind of snake?
All pet fun.
Nice.
5 years old and 5 feet long.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Cool. Okay. So next up is Melissa. Okay.
I'm blind. My name's Melissa.
I'll just
Shooter,
hang out
and
here
I am
and
your
help
Heartwood membership director. So what I do is every time you pay dues, I log that into the system. Every time you log your hours, I approve them. So they have to be logged in the proper spot for me to approve them. So how many of y'all have gotten on your VMS account? And y'all have looked at opportunities. Is there anybody in the room that's not on VMS? 2, 3, 4. No, you're on there.
I checked, it wouldn't let me, look for volunteer.
No, because now you do have opportunities, yes.
I was a transfer ticket.
We got it fixed, I think. You still can't get in, so I need to give you your password probably. So I had to talk to Dale and have him go find a few of you because y'all were lost in the system. And the system has been messed up. So yesterday I went to approve hours and it wouldn't let me, and I'm not sure. I put a help ticket in. And we'll see what's going on with that, but I will get you all settled out. Everybody has had a background check, I'm sure by now. I always check that first. You can't volunteer unless your background check has passed. So. Can I see? When you go into the program, now I want to switch.
Now you want to.
Sorry.
I'll just stand here and.
What I'm gonna do is log into my system, my page, and show you all the opportunities. It seemed to work really well. Did y'all go over the 40 hours and the 8 hours and y'all already done all that?
We did, but you can say it again.
Okay. So for the training classes, you're logging all these training classes under initial training, IT. It's gonna be under field research, and I'll look it up here in a minute. And, but when you go to the website that I have pulled up here, this is our Heartwood website. Most everything you need is up here on the little bars. And what we're gonna need is record your hours right here. So let's see if I can successfully log in. Can't see. You know, I have my tag at the house. Just log in, not a problem.
Are you connected to the internet?
Are we not connected to the internet?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're not using your portal?
No, not using portal.
I will say it's a lot easier if you have your computer, just remember your password and log in, so you don't have to do this, you know, on your own personal computer. It is much easier.
It should log me in, that's. But is this somebody else's computer by chance?
This is Virginia's. Okay, that's how my day's going, that's okay.
I don't mind if you need.
Yeah, you wanna log into yours, doesn't matter either or.
I mean, just
I know mine. I don't
if
know
it
why.
doesn't let me in either,
Yeah.
then there's something going on, I guess.
It was all wonky yesterday. I'm gonna show you the opportunity. So a lot of y'all emailed me and said, I can't log my hours. That's because I didn't add the opportunities to your account. So whenever you go from one chapter to another chapter, we have to put our opportunities in there. So if you're in, we'll say the Gulf Coast chapter, you're gonna have Galveston Island State Park, you know, versus our chapter is gonna have Huntsville State Park. Okay, so here we have Gwen's. And we're gonna go to report my service. And that's where you're gonna go when you log in to go report your service. And you have a drop down box. And it has all of your stuff. We're gonna go to the very top. What is it you're not there? Yeah, this thing. Okay. And you can see we start with our AT options. AT is advanced training, okay? So what do y'all have, 61 hours in your class, scheduled in your class? And how many do you need? 40. So if you do all these classes and you get your 40 initial training hours, the extra classes can go into AT. And we'll put them AT other partners or whatever that may be. If you're at Mercer, it would go under Mercer. It just depends. So do y'all see, y'all can see all the different stuff that we have for training. A lot of our partners do training, but sometimes we find something that's not on here. So we'll go down to single presentation. So when we find stuff like that, that's really not labeled with one of our partners like WG Jones or Mercer Arboretum or Floodwoods, then we would have to put that in there in the description box. And it has to be descriptive because I got my hand slapped this week because even I made a mistake. I was logging my hours and I get in a hurry because I was doing so many different things, dues, intern stuff, that I wrote dues. And Dale said, I need more information. I'm like, well, obviously, Dale, I'm recording dues. But he goes, I think they're all retiring. I think Dell and him are all retiring, so he's setting all this up for the next people coming in because we're having a change in administration on VMS. So I had to go back in and put log dues to VMS account for membership. Interns, I had to go in there, but move opportunities for interns into VMS. So I got my hand slapped. I know, I had never had my hand slapped like that. Anyway, so on the single presentations, you would put where you were at. Let's say you went down to Galveston Island State Park and you took a class on shorebirds or something like that. That's fine. It just has to be a Texas related to our mission statement. And you would put on there where you went. Who was the speaker? I do need to know who the speaker is. And just the time and everything. So let's say we're gonna click on that. And Gwen's gonna have to go in and delete all this out of her account. So it says the different workshops, so you'd put the date, then you'd put the hours right here, we'll just put 2 hours. And then in this box right here is where you put the description time, okay? Now, advanced training, you cannot claim your travel time, okay? You cannot claim travel time on advanced training. But if you were going to volunteer at Galveston Island State Park, and I'm just using that for an advantage, it has a longer travel time for us. We'll back out. Does anybody have any questions about that? Yes.
Like if you watched one of the wildlife series, there was one about the climate resilience of trees. Do you just put the title or do you have to put the,
You cannot claim anything besides our TMN Tuesdays that are not live webinars.
it was live.
Oh, okay. If
but
it's
it was-
live,
And it was on the calendar.
yeah, that's
But-
fine.
But I'm just wondering, when you have to fill out that information, exactly what do you need to say in that describe your
You put the
training?
title in there.
Just the title?
Title,
You don't have
speaker.
to
What
you learned kind of thing?
No, no,
Okay,
no.
good.
Title and speaker so we can track all that. And a lot of times there's different things going on behind the scenes. So for instance, on the volunteer hours, every volunteer hour that is counted for federal funding is worth $24. So if you're at one of the parks volunteering, like I volunteer at Brazos Bend State Park, but I don't count it for Master Naturalist. It is on my account. I can see it when I log in to TPWD. But every hour I volunteer there, they get reimbursed for $24. So all the volunteers at Brazos Bend do the work of 17 employees. So it's millions of dollars they get federally. Not all of your stuff counts for stuff like that, but that's why it's important that we're putting everything in properly. And it's counted. They track a lot of data. Lisa's a data person. I'm not. I track your hours and how many hours the chapter brings in and stuff like that. Go ahead.
If you put it in there already, like if there was two things, and you didn't put the speaker's name, can you go back and edit
You
it?
sure can. You can go back and edit it.
Is there a way? Okay,
If I go back, Gwen probably doesn't have anything sitting in her dashboard. Let me go look. View your logbook is where you go.
okay.
And she does have something sitting there. So let's see. And because I tried to approve hours the other day and it didn't work. So if you check the box, you can go delete, or you can go edit.
Okay.
Okay, don't,
But you can't edit it after it's approved, correct?
nope, but I can. If you email me, I can pull it back up to the system and edit it. But then, anything that I have to put back in the system and I edit it, I can't approve it. So somebody else has to approve it. So a lot of times I'll have Dell or Cheryl approve it for me until we get some more VMS people. Okay, that's advanced training, non-specific stuff. Let's go back to the dashboard, report my service, and drop down to the next thing we have. So whenever we have a chapter meeting, it'll be under.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Did you say at the beginning that we need to log the hours of these classes in?
Yes, under initial training. I'm gonna scroll down here. It should be,
Okay,
it should be on here. Yes, all these classes go under initial training. So when we do a chapter meeting, it goes under AT chapter meeting, okay? And those are once a month. They're on the calendar. They're usually an hour long. So, go ahead.
And so even though I'm trying to understand the difference between initial training and advanced training, since I don't have like 40 hours yet. The chapter meeting still goes under advanced, not under initial.
Yeah, it goes under advanced. Okay, anything outside of your training classes goes under advanced. So let's say TMN Tuesday comes up next month. And you do that, you're gonna log it under TMN Tuesday. Right down here somewhere, where's that?
That's it.
Yeah, TMN Tuesday. That's where that one goes. Texas Waters, as Terry was talking about, there are monthly webinars for that. You can go onto the website and reserve your spot. You have to register for all the Texas Waters. And that goes under AT Texas Waters. So somebody already asked me where their little box was under AT Texas Waters. You don't have one under AT Texas Waters. It's just AT Texas Waters.
Well,
yeah.
And the same rules apply if you, Parks and Wildlife does offer once a month, January through August, a 1 hour online. But it's the same rules. You have to watch it live. You're reported as AT. You can go back and watch it later. But it's a lot, as with other online things, that this one has to be watched live. And even though you may report it in, if you logged in, if you registered and then you logged in, she already knows it. So, you know, that helps too for keeping those.
And you're gonna get an email. So when you watch Texas Waters, you also get a thank you the next day for watching it. She knows you were online. So she'll thank you for watching it and then you can log your hours. Before we go any further about logging your hours, I know you're probably not gonna go jump on the computer after every class or every training. But I encourage you to write it down weekly in a calendar or somewhere so you don't forget. And then maybe choose a date that you're gonna log your hours every week or month. I'd like it to be done weekly. Only because with interns, it's easier for me to keep up with your hours and share them with your training team. That way they know where you're at and we can try to keep all of you on target to graduate. We really want everybody to graduate in the class. And if we see that someone's falling behind on their other stuff, their volunteer hours, we can help you find some things to do so you can graduate. And that's kind of the tracking that I'm doing on y'all's stuff. And you're welcome to email me during this time and say, hey, where am I at? If you can't find it, but usually it's right here at the top. But I'll show you that when we get through the other. Okay. Going down, the next one is CB admin. I don't think y'all have anything for that right now. That one's not something that they
Well,
would.
it depends. There are
Yeah.
some people already doing
Are they?
work, yeah.
Okay. So chapter business goes under there. If I'm going in, for instance, and I'm logging dues or intern stuff, I'll click CB admin and that's where I'll log those hours. That's also where I log the time that I spend approving your hours because it's chapter admin, but there's a drop down box. We might as well go there. So you scroll here and then there's a drop down box and you have to choose what you are doing. So if we were working on it, someone may have been working on a chapter meeting, like Lisa may have been working on a chapter meeting. President duties, vice president duties, treasurer's duties, secretary duties, hour management, that's what I do. Hospitality, communication, there's a ton of all these things. And you choose what you were volunteering to do for chapter business. So, and then we go out of that, let me go council. Now, back to the drop down box. No. Okay, report my service. Okay, the next thing under that is chapter meeting. So that's important. Every month we have a chapter meeting. And the first part of our chapter meeting is going to be business, okay? And it's usually 0.50, 30 minutes. And that's generally here or AgriLife is where we'll be. It's on the calendar. And that's when we're just going over everything we have to offer for y'all for the month, like volunteer options, any announcements will be at the beginning of those meetings. That is also where you can log your drive time to the meeting. So it's only 30 minutes. So you can't log an hour of travel time. You can only log 30 minutes. Your time cannot exceed the amount of time you were spending driving. Okay, that's important because I drive an hour both ways. I came down 1488 today again. Oh, look, I'm going back 99. I'm going that way. I didn't realize the traffic, there's a lane shift or something. Does everybody understand the chapter? Okay, good. The next thing is DO. So each one of your opportunities has a definition. So here we are with DO, direct outreach. And you can read each one under there. That's homework. Go through these and read each one. So you understand what they're for. And I don't mind you emailing me and saying, hey, where do I put this? Because I'll email you back. I'll tell you where to put it. You're all learning. So it's not a big deal at all. It may take me a day or two. So, and you're welcome to text me. I have a cell phone. You can text me. I don't mind at all. And direct outreach is when you're working with people directly. Sometimes they're coming and going. It just depends on what you're doing. I don't have an example. Unless,
A guided hike.
Guided hike, that some of these can go many ways, but a guided hike, you're having those people stay with you during that time. And working a booth, but that can be also, that's where things get a little sticky with some of these. I think you're gonna have an opportunity to do a lot of this stuff because spring is coming and we're gonna have so many different opportunities, so y'all can do some.
I'm looking on here and I don't see it for Lake Houston Wilderness Park under direct DO.
I don't know if we have one for them. It depends on what they're doing there.
Yeah, I've been helping with kids camps. I've been helping with field trips from schools. Taking charge of the center when the naturalists are not available. So I think that fits as direct outreach.
Or public outreach. Do they have public outreach on there for them?
So on the calendar, when those opportunities come up, it will be listed what the VMS code should be.
But the ones at Lake Houston, the ones that we're both doing are not on the calendar.
They're on their calendar probably.
Okay, so they haven't sent those to us yet. Okay.
Yeah, so, but I'm sure we can,
The Nature Center is gonna be public outreach.
does DO and volunteer, I guess we'll get to it. Does it matter if it's DO or volunteering? Like if you're.
It does matter, if it's public outreach and it does. It depends on what they're getting. I don't know that they're getting any federal money from us or from TPWD.
So should I just email you then and let you know what I've been doing so you can tell me how to code it then?
Yes, and then we need to find out if that code needs to be added to that. So what happens is when we have to have a lot of activity on a code. Because if we don't have a lot of activity on the code, they don't want it in the system. So if we put it on the system and it's just sitting there, it's just sitting there causing confusion. And then nothing's being logged on it, it's not going anywhere. Cheryl will clean them up and take them off the system. So I know we have some that only get used once a year. So that would be the Black Bear one. I think Jennifer uses it once a year for their meetings. They just had a meeting. She logged that and I was like, oh. And I never see it. And I'm like, oh, it's a Black Bear thing. And it's once a year, but it is a federally funded one. So I know that we need it and, they're gonna get money for that. So it doesn't get taken off because there's money tagged to that. So we need to get with y'all and just find out if we need to add some stuff for y'all and see how much y'all are gonna use it. And that may be doing a little investigating.
And my daughter is the naturalist there and also the master naturalist.
Who is it?
Is a master, Katie Love.
Yes.
Yeah, so
just have Katie add up hours for a month.
I'm already in the volunteer one, so.
Yeah, so no, like have Katie say, here's homework for Katie. Have Katie make a list of what y'all were doing and how many hours y'all were doing during the month for that. And then I can take that and say, Cheryl, what do you think? Should we add this to there? And then Cheryl would say, yeah, that's 20 hours, 30 hours a month. We want to be logging that.
Right.
Versus if it was once every 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, I've already put in like 24 hours just.
Yeah, then I think she would probably.
And you said that was Lake Houston Wilderness Park?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because we had those on the calendar.
I don't know that they were
November.
under.
I don't think the kids camps that I've been helping with were on there. I think that the thing that was on there was she has a native garden club on a Friday morning and a master naturalist came the one day from here and they ended up helping with the kids camp because nobody came because it was the winter, blah, blah. But
Right.
anyway, so I know that other people have tried to go over there, so.
Yeah, so I was just gonna make the point that, if we get those ahead of time, and you said it was Katie?
Yeah.
Then we get them into the system and then it's very clear on the calendar that these opportunities are available. So the last ones we had were in November and it was DO, but we used training and education events and then just specified Lake Houston Wilderness Park.
But it's not a big deal to add it if
Right.
that's what we're gonna do. And we have more things going on out there, we can add it
I
definitely.
can email.
Some of our newer things is like Lake Creek was a new one that was put on there. There's different ones. And we do that every time we have a new class. Y'all bring something to the class. You do. And we end up having a new opportunity put in here because somebody says, why do this over here? And I'm like, I didn't know that existed. But somebody always brings something new. And that's the one great thing about having a new intern class. We all learn stuff. Y'all are not just learning stuff. We are learning stuff too. It's so cool to meet new people that have all this other creativity and things that they love, brings so much to the group. But moving on past DO, this is the boring part. I'm sorry, guys. Field research. Field research is cool because a lot of it, there's a couple that y'all can do in your backyard. And I definitely want you to know about them because it's going to help you get your hours to graduate. So one that I'm going to talk about right off the bat, and y'all are going to have a class on it, is Cocoa Raws. So you can do weather monitoring in your yard. And I'm not gonna say too much, but I'm gonna say if you're interested in that and you want to get set up, go to their website. And they do have a website. It is cocoros.gov, right? I believe it's,
I can't read that. Can you spell it? The Coco.
oh, yeah, it's COCORAHS. You can go look them up. They'll have a video on how to report weather. And I'd like to tell you all this in the beginning because you can report this weekly. And like for 0.50, a lot of people do that weekly on CocoRoss. And it also counts as Texas Waters. And there's a little box if you're gonna do Texas Waters. If some of you know already you wanna do Texas Waters, then you need to email me so I can add the box to your system. So that's one that you can do that's really easy. Any of our birding populations. Bird populations, if you go to Cled Woods, first you're gonna go look on their calendar and see if they're gonna have a bird count that day. And then you can go over there and do the bird count with Adrian, and then you can log those hours under your bird populations. And in the description box, you would put bird count, Cled Woods, da, da, da. Yeah.
Is there a limit to how many, field research hours you can do towards the 40 hours?
No, there's not, and we do like you to be well-rounded. Okay, so
That's 18.
what?
Would it be? Field research is only 7.
No, there is a limit on some of our field research. I'm gonna tell y'all as I scroll right on down to this. Hang on, where is it? Right here. eBird monitoring. There's a limit. So you cannot log eBird hours, hour for hour that you're out there. Like if you're out there for an hour, you can't log that. Something happened, the rules changed, but I have a loophole I can teach you. Hey, I do, it's okay, it's all good. Because I hate that, I don't like that you can't get some of that time. It does have to be specific though. So eBird, if you're out there for an hour, you can come back and you can log 0.25, which is 15 minutes to log your data on eBird account. So you can't log your time out there, but you can log your data time that you're entering your data time. And that's kind of the same with our INAT too. Unless you're doing observations, there's so much stuff, and we're gonna talk about probably a little bit of this in each class, I'm assuming, because you're gonna have different classes. The Great Backyard Bird Count's coming up. That one's another great one. You can sign up for it. You can sit in your backyard and count birds, and you can claim all those hours. That's not just logging data. You were sitting in the yard for 6 hours watching birds, you can log it. We'll have the dates for that. It'll be on the calendar when we have the big sit and stuff like that. Hummingbird Home, I think they discontinued that website. I need to probably take that off. Huntsville State Park, field research for Huntsville State Park. I'm trying to think what they do.
And you count your bird time when you're outside of Texas.
Nope, anything you do, anything you learn, anywhere you go has to be Texas related. Linda.
Yes, I wanted to know if we do these backyard hours, whether it's bird monitoring, bird or the other ones. In any other part that is not, for example, Jesse Jones or Cut Woods, can we still report those if we do it somewhere else?
eBird, yes, only your data logging, only your 15 minutes of data logging. But there's a loophole for eBird. Let's say you go to Huntsville State Park and you're gonna use eBird, but you're gonna use Adopt-a-Loop. You can claim all your time for Adopt-a-Loop. And Adopt-a-Loop, we have an Adopt-a-Loop on here. Where did it go?
DPWD, Adopt-a-Loop special, I'm two above.
Yeah, but this is a very jumpy one, right there. Yeah. So Adopt-a-Loop, and Corinne is a head of Adopt-a-Loop. If you go to Huntsville State Park, and you're gonna do Adopt-a-Loop, you're gonna take when you go to put it on INAT, which is a whole other class. So many things that you haven't learned yet. I think there's a little bit every class we can talk about, but you'll put the Adopt-a-Loop you're on, that you're logging into INAT. And in the description box, you'll put that Adopt-a-Loop code. I have to have it in the description box because Corinne's gonna call me and say, hey, I need an Adopt-a-Loop data update. And he wants to know where everybody was for maybe a quarter, like 1 quarter, the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter. And then I would give him that data, and he takes that data and takes it back to Texas Parks and Wildlife and turns it in on one of his research projects. So he's logging what y'all are doing, and they're finding out all that information.
How do we find the code?
The code for when you pull up INAT, that project's there.
Okay.
You haven't, Craig Hensley's gonna teach you about INAT. So when is Craig coming? In a couple weeks, or is it?
Like a Thursday night or something.
Okay, so on that Zoom, put that note down for yourself. Ask Craig about Dr. Luke. And he'll be happy to tell you all that. But I like to give you a Dr. Luke as a freebie, you know, when you're out at Huntsville or one of the parks that have a Dr. Luke. There's several. And I can get Corinne to make y'all a list, so y'all have it. And then that's hours you can get when you're out, you know, birding or whatever, because you're not just logging birds on a Dr. Luke, but it's birds, but if you see other mammals and stuff, you can log those too. So, but there's a lot of field research stuff. This is the one that's going on right now, Project Feeder Watch. So this one, you do have to pay Cornell $18 every year to do Feeder Watch. And then you make an account up and you watch the birds from your window at the house. Or if, like the other day, I was outside in the snow watching the birds. I'm like, what do we have out here? But you have to count the birds and identify the birds. And then when you log into Cornell, you have to click, you know, the bird and put the numbers of the birds that you saw. And then they want to know if it snowed, which it did. I could finally log snow. That was exciting. I did temperatures. I did any weird stuff that was going on. I had a murder of crows. I mean, like 20 of them. They were having a fit. They were chasing a hawk. And I sat and watched them for a long time. They were very entertaining. Crows they're so cool. But all that got logged into Feeder Watch because you log animal activities or animal things. And then they have a new thing. They log, how do you feel? Did you say, I don't know if anybody else is doing that. Are you happy? Like the day where you have a lot of activity, I'm like, I am happy. Yeah. If you watch it, for instance, if you watch a hawk kill a bluebird, I am sad. Not happy about that. But a lot of things happen and you can use those hours. If I did eBird this weekend, and I do eBird, I'm not that one, I'm sorry, Feeder Watch. Did I scroll down? I can log 8 hours a weekend for that. We got 2 free days this week to watch birds, so.
So for that, do you know, if it only counts if you're live sitting in front of your window? Cause I have a cam that automatically alerts me when a bird comes to my feeder and it records it. And then at the end of the day, cause I've been at work,
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna allow that. They prefer you be in your yard. I know where you're going. I have one of those too. And I haven't asked that question because I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
They specifically say, no, you can't watch on camera, you have to.
It'd be nice though, wouldn't it? No. It's like those nanny cams, you know, when you put your kid in daycare and they have a camera, you'd be watching it all day. You'd be watching birds all day. I have one of those too, and you get the little bleeps, the pictures.
Yeah.
But they misidentify. I've already catch them.
I still identify myself, but
Yeah.
I get the alerts at work and I'll like peek and see who's there.
They're not good with wobblers or are wobblers anyway. Everything's a ruby king light or something. I'm like, no, that's not right. Okay. I'm gonna keep moving down. Y'all understand field research. Okay, you're going out, you're doing stuff, you're collecting data on whatever we're collecting data on. And y'all are gonna learn so much about that. There's a lot we're gonna make y'all into superb citizen scientists. Okay, NPA. Some of y'all did that the other day and you logged your stuff for the garden under NPA. Let's click on it. There's your description. Field-based activities, you're improving an area for the public, and y'all were doing a garden, right? Y'all worked in a garden. And this one's a tricky one too, because a lot of, you have NPA, resource management, what's the other one?
Technical guidance.
Technical guidance, there's a bunch. So again, if you get stumped, just email me, tell me what you did, and we'll get it sorted out. It'll take a little while, but once you get the hang of it and what you're doing and what's going on, it'll be okay. Most of the time, it's gonna be on our calendar. You're not even gonna have to worry about it because the little code is already there for you. It's basically when you go off on your own that you're like, where do I put this?
Is there a key on the site for what all these abbreviations?
No, I did make one. I don't have them printed. I'll bring them to the next training for y'all.
What is in here? It's in your little.
It's also in this folder.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
they have it in the folder.
And you're gonna get a copy of this presentation.
We have a little, slideshow for this.
Lisa, where's the initial training? Because you already announced.
It may not be on hers. I'm looking.
Well, I don't think it's on anybody's. Because Linda doesn't have it either.
Oh, you know what? I may have to add it because they changed the system and I had to go back. I bet it's not in that drop down. So when I move your hours, there's 2 pages of 2 pages of this stuff I moved to your account. Okay. And sometimes there's things that aren't in there. Like you probably don't have East Texas Black Bear thing. Sometimes that doesn't come over because when I pick filters, I pick the general ones for our chapter that Cheryl has already put out. And initial, I think I had to move initial after they changed it, that first little time. So if you don't see it, don't worry. It should be right under here, right under field research. And I will go home directly and make sure you all have one. You have it? But that's because I've added it to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Gwen doesn't have it, but I do.
I'll fix it for you. No, Gwen doesn't have it because she's already, and I wouldn't have taken it out. Cheryl or probably Dale took it out. Okay. NPA, we did that.
We
OT.
weren't even on this system when Gwen and I were.
No, they were not. So
We chiseled it into stone.
they had paper. They had paper and pens and graphs. And I will tell you that the state changed the system in 2014. And that meant somebody had to, Jennifer Sills had to go through, and she was on that team that transferred everything. And what an amazing job those people did, because that was a lot of data. What year did y'all start, Terry?
Well,
2005.
the chapter
Yeah.
started in 2005. We were, I think, both certified by then. But,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the year you're talking about, Jennifer, if I remember right, she reported like 1,400 hours
Mhm.
that year because of all that.
Yeah, they had to be put in the system. Yeah, she got 1,000 hours very quickly. And that's what VMS will do for you. For the headache. That and a headache. Okay. But it's all done. We are having a system change, but it's nothing for you to worry about right now. OT. Others. So let's see. This example I'm gonna give you is definitely Bayou Land Conservancy. So let's say Lisa sits on the board for Bayou Land Conservancy and she's going to a business meeting for Bayou Land Conservancy, and that's gonna go under OT. Okay, other stuff. And you get it, you get to claim it, but it just doesn't go anywhere. It's not. It's just other.
So it counts towards your 40 hours.
It
but
does
we don't
count
get the
towards your-
matching or Texas Parks. and
Yeah,
Rec
there's no
doesn't get
matching for it or anything like that.
It does.
It does. It just doesn't count for, say, not, and a lot of things don't.
And normally they'll say it on there if they do not.
Let's go to Huntsville State Park. Huntsville State Park does count. Or it should. It may not, who knows? I don't know if, I've talked to John about that a couple times. Okay, public outreach. That's working with the public. That could be the nature center at Huntsville State Park or any of the nature centers. And, working a booth, working a table where people are coming up and talking to you. Are y'all doing the same service project y'all did last year where y'all make little tables or no?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So your end of year stuff will be public outreach. Anything you go out and do where you're dealing with the public and they're kind of coming and going kind of situation is public outreach. Your DO was direct outreach and they're with you. You're taking them on a hike. Okay? Public outreach, you're not really taking them anywhere. They're just kind of coming and going. RM Resource Management. So. New Huntsville State Park again, Cledwoods. Resource management for Cledwoods is lots of things. You could go out there and pick up trash. And then in the description box, you're gonna put that down. I picked up trash at Cledwoods. And there's a ton of different things. You see restoration here. I know we have people that will log resource management. They were redoing the birdhouses at Cledwoods. So it's resource management. Cleaning invasives, which they pull, there's kudzu out there, believe it or not. They pull all the kudzu and stuff down. They're trimming trails and different things. And that can go under NPA also. So there's a couple that branch over to both sides. And they don't have any rescue rehabilitation out there. Okay. TG. We don't have a lot of TGs. Technical guidance. So some people put their newsletter stuff under technical guidance. If they're working on a newsletter, they're doing articles, giving advice, doing different things. There's not a lot of this logged. There's only a few things a month. I think it's only Susan Beckermeyer. Like she does things for newsletters and stuff like that. There's not a lot of technical guidance. But if you went out to a landowner and you were helping them learn about bluebirds, put bluebird boxes up, that's technical guidance. You're talking to somebody about, is that it already? And then the bottom one that I have is the, I feel like I was missing some. Is the state, virtual volunteer thing. Gwen, have you done that? You've done the virtual volunteer.
And I'm never really sure where to put it. So back during the pandemic, they had these days where they came up with all these volunteer things you could do online. And one of them goes back to being able to read cursive. For the herbariums, they wanted you to read the label and type it so that they could put it into a search engine. So I got like hours, AT hours, I guess, for attending the
Yes,
virtual
it was AT.
volunteer service. And then when I put in the labels, I guess that would be technical guidance to like Botanical Research Institute of Texas.
Yeah. Transcribing.
And another thing I do is there's a group for the ranch lands of Texas, and that's through TPWD. They wanted us to go out and take photographs of the native plants and then crop them, and they would put them on the website. So I guess that again, it's all online, it's all virtual, but it's technical guidance.
Yes, and we're gonna have this again, and then if you watch it and you go, oh, I wanna help do that. There was one for aqua plants. Remember the aquatic plants? They wanted you to go take pictures of the aquatic plants and then upload them. They're building libraries, basically. There's a lot of that going on. There's many other things going on, but from what I've seen, when I was watching it, there was a lot of library building kind of things, which is great because again, you're a citizen scientist, you're going out, you're helping out, and then maybe somebody's gonna be looking at those things to learn some more. Okay, that is all of your opportunities. I do want you to go through, get familiar with them. I bet you've already got things lined out that you want to do, where you want to be, you know. Some of you may be with Bayou Land Conservancy. Maybe some of you came from Mercer or Cledwoods or learned about us that way. But go through there, get to know the VMS system, and then, you know, write down your stuff, log your hours once a week. You can, later on when you're not an intern, you can do it once a month. But right, like several people do them monthly, and I know right at the end of the month, I can see all of their hours start to drop. And that's just kind of cool though, because I know what they're logging already every week. I mean, every month, you know, I know where they're at. Y'all all have like a rhythm that y'all follow when I'm logging, when you're doing your hours, so I know where you're at. Sometimes y'all throw a wrench in there. I think, is it Quinn? Do you do Featherfest? Galveston Featherfest?
No, I wish.
I know it was Vicky, it was, Julie Vickers, yes.
Oh.
So they go to the Featherfest down south, and she always emails me, we're going to Featherfest again, so don't be surprised when some of that comes up on VMS. And that's okay, you know, we can do that. And if you go somewhere else, you can do that. Get permission on some things. If you're going to a park, you're gonna go camping. Let's say you're gonna go to Caprock Canyon Park and you end up picking up trash. Can you claim that? You can, but we do want you to go tell the park ranger that you picked up a couple pounds of trash, log it into the system. That you were at Caprock Canyon, you picked up 5 pounds of trash, da, 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 da. There's a system for it. And they may have a program too. They may give you a bucket. They have bucket brigade, Galveston Island State Park. They had a bucket brigade for years. You go in the office, get a bucket, you fill it up, they document it. What did you pull off the beach or, and they have a program there and you could be part of their bucket brigade. And it's not on our system, but it's on Gulf Coast. It's not a big deal. I can just put it under resource management and you put it in the description box. Okay? What kind of questions do y'all have? Go ahead.
Like for this, when I'm preparing for a talk and I do a little bit every day over several days, how do you want me to put that in?
You can put it all together. You can put it all
Say,
together.
like, in the dates, I just put a range or.
You don't
the
have-
last date I finished and then write it in the description.
That's how you can do it. When I'm doing anything like that for training, I do the same thing. I just say preparation. And if you're doing direct outreach, it's preparation. And how much time you spent putting your slides together or whatever, gathering your data, getting your resources, put it all in there. So.
We're picking up trash in our neighborhoods.
No. It's already been tried. Yeah, if it's a park, if you want. It's been tried, but it failed because like the neighborhood didn't get on board with it. Okay, so there's gotta be that database and. For instance, we do have some neighborhoods that are part of a wildlife program or something like that, and. Terry. Go ahead, she's probably.
So you may know that Heartwood and the Woodlands Green are local 501c3 environmental education nonprofit that I'm a member of as well. And W.G. Jones Forest have recently begun a great collaboration. We're doing a lot of things on Jones Forest because it is so wonderfully near and such a wonderful place. And so through this collaboration, Green is now working to do litter collections and audits. We report that data that we create by auditing, literally sorting and counting every piece of trash we pick up during a litter collection. We report it in to Keep Texas Beautiful. So if you want to pick up litter in your neighborhood and be able to count it, reach out to me and get a group together, and we'll not just pick up litter, we'll do an audit. And then you can count. But as Melissa says, hey, thanks to you, you're a wonderful person if you pick up trash in your neighborhood. But you want to count the time, let's do an audit. Then we have data.
There's lots of things we can create and do. It's just a matter of somebody coming forward and saying, we're gonna go to Huntsville State Park, we're gonna pick up trash today. This is the time I'm gonna be there. You can put things on the calendar. We can make, like I said, every intern group brings new things to the table. And there's things that we can do. Are y'all all local? Everybody's around the Woodlands area, Spring, Magnolia? No, further out?
Yeah, we're in Huntsville.
Huntsville, okay. Well, that's close to the park area, so. Texas Beautiful. It was Carolyn Warshall who came up with the one where you get in your kayak and clean up the water at Lake Conroe. And she brought that to us. And she logs all that. She does a trash thing. She counts all of her trash and then turns it all in. We did not have that on our VMS until she brought it to us. So she picks up a lot of trash on Lake Conroe. It's gross. But I'm glad she decided to do it. I know y'all did trash bashes too, right? For the Woodlands?
Hit and miss.
Hit and
Really
miss.
hit and miss.
So. But there's programs too.
There
like
is.
The Adopt a Path in the Woodlands,
Yes.
Adopt a Highway.
I was
those
going
sorts
to
of
ask the Adopt a Path, can I count it?
Yes, you can. So we do have one at Mercer. We have one in the ones in the Woodlands. Bayou, well, I don't know, Bayou Lake, it's the trails, so that's different. But-
Woodlands Green has an adopted.
Yeah, Woodlands Green, Mercer, Arboretum, Heartwood has a path there, and Anita's gonna come talk about their program. I think you're going there, right? So y'all could walk on our path and see where you can get trash. But always be a good steward. I mean, just because you're not gonna get hours for it, doesn't mean you have to do it. You're not gonna get a pen for everything, but everything you do that reflects and people see that you're doing good, and then they're gonna wanna do good. I work with children, so I am gonna save all the nature, and the kids that I work with will tell you, don't kill nature. Even every little bug counts. We don't wanna kill, we wanna find out about it, we wanna find out what it does. So we're always learning and teaching. Okay, so y'all know that after you get your initial training hours, you have to have 40 hours of volunteer service. And you have to have 8 hours of AT to certify.
You want the lights on for this?
You can, it's whatever. When you certify and graduate at the same time, you get a certificate and your little pen, your certification pen. If you just graduate, don't worry, we'll get you there. You'll just get a certificate that day. And then we're watching your hours and the team's working to get you certified. So sometimes we don't give, we give a lot of these out in December, because life happens. Don't worry, it does. And then we'll get you certified and get your hours in. And if you ever need something, I mean, call me. I'll come up with something for you to volunteer with. I'll find you something that may be close to you. Like y'all are saying Huntsville, I'm like, let's talk to the Ranger John and see what we can find for you. But there's other stuff up there too.
Yeah.
Sharon used to fill bird feeders for one of the schools up there.
Yeah.
And I bet since she's moved, nobody's done it.
There's the Huntsville Bat Colony.
Yes, the Huntsville Bat Colony, that we're very active there. Jennifer would be happy to help you, and Gerald. So if you give me your area, I'll be happy to tell you things in your area.
We'd like to try for, building, let's say, a community garden in Arden Spring.
That's gonna be Spring Creek Greenway, probably, over there. We'll have to find out. We are going there. They do have they have a pollinator garden. So the pollinator garden is in the front and in the back in the raised beds that they have in place. And I'm sure they need help upkeeping, just even upkeeping, helping weed it. And they do have the NIPSOT put in a pollinator garden at Spring Creek Greenway. And it's not being maintained very well right now because it's cold. But I'm sure that they have a time that you can go out there and help with that kind of stuff. And like I said, every class, you're gonna learn more stuff. You're gonna get overwhelmed. I want to do everything. You can't. You get so overwhelmed. And it's so fun to learn all the new things and all the things in our community that you're gonna come across, and some of the new places that you're gonna come across that maybe you didn't even know existed in our area. And if you have kids and grandkids, you're gonna have some really cool places to take them and learn things. And then you're gonna have a new partner for that too. You're gonna meet our partner and the people that work at these places, and they're gonna help you, find where you wanna be. And that changes for me too, year to year. Like 1 year I did the bug class, and I do a lot of butterfly stuff. I love birds too, but I mean, you just keep coming across new things. And believe it or not, the Texas Master Naturalist group, they have a lot of stuff that we find out, even at our state meetings, There's a lady, did you take the class on the lichen?
No.
Okay, there's a lady that was teaching about the lichen. She didn't have a degree in that or anything. She was a bartender. And, wow, what a fascinating class she taught. She blew everybody away with her knowledge. She was a bartender. And she was just now going to college for this. But that just caught her eye, and that's what she went with. And she probably teaches it better than any professor that might have studied it for 10 years. But it was amazing. You're gonna meet people like that just spark your interest and want you to grow with the program. So I am here to help you with anything. If you're not on the system, I will help you get on the system. Yeah, questions?
Melissa, I am raising the next generation wild too. A huge part of why I'm here, to keep our wild, our children wild and our places wild. But next month, so I see that you have Lake Creek Greenway on them, which is awesome. So I'm in collaboration with the president of the partnership there, Glenn Buckley. And he's actually hosting Project Wild, which is the curriculum that a lot of nature centers use. That workshop is actually at our house on February 8th.
Oh, nice.
So I know that we have a class, an intern class. I'll probably be able to hop in at the beginning of it. But anybody that's not an intern, and that is interested in becoming certified to teach Project Wild, Product Wild, all of these, it's a 6-hour workshop on our property. So you go onto the Texas Parks and Wildlife.
Yes, go to their website.
To register. There's a few spots I think left.
Yeah.
So, and then also, I don't know if that ties into training or how it would be.
It does, it's advanced training. If you go take that, it's advanced training and it's other partners. I don't think it's on our site. It is a TPWD. I've done it before, a couple different ones. And I have you get a curriculum book with it and you can go teach stuff with the kids and it's pretty cool. We've done some really cool ones, at school. For instance, I gave them a blank butterfly and they had to make it camouflage and put it in the classroom. One kid was really smart. He just left his white and put it on the whiteboard. And I was like, that's not effort, but hey, they're pretty smart. But some kids, they matched it to the door, you know, where you couldn't even see it. I was like, wow, they have artistic ability. So the curriculum is really good and some of it's simple, some of it's hard. They have different age groups throughout the book. So you'll have your pre-K to like 2nd grade and then 3rd, 4th, 5th, and then it goes up to high school years. So it's really good. If you want to go do something like that, that's an awesome.
And then another thing, I just got placed at Texas A&M in Galveston. They have summer camp. It's called Sea Camp.
Yep.
They took some of our home education group to do blue crabbing and that this previous fall. And I was placed as a counselor for their marine biology in June. So would that also count?
It does. And here's the thing. She's not telling you the part where they wake you up at 4 a.m. every morning.
I've done that.
I have friends that I'm not getting up at 4 a.m. Not with, I would, I lie, I would, but that's usually the duck camps where you get up and take the kids to go shoot things. Yeah, they have all that. It's all available. There's a lot. Oh my goodness, there's so much stuff. I'm not gonna throw it all at you today because you'll go home and be on the internet all day trying to find it all. But we have Texas brigades that people volunteer for. We have the Texas Angler Program. I'm an angler. And we go volunteer with kids and we it's amazing to get out with kids and even other adults. The cool thing, a couple months ago, we had a Girl Scout Day at Huntsville State Park. I was not excited. I mean, it was me and Brenda and a few other people. And some of our other people were there because they had scouts. And Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts are oh so fun. It's a mixed bag when you have kids and you never know what you're gonna get. So we were using hooks. So y'all know I was like, oh man, keep your distance. They're gonna be flinging these poles. But the coolest thing is we're all out there getting these kids out there to fish. They've never fished. They've never held a pole. Some of them have never been to a state park, but one of the coolest things that happened, Mike, that runs that program, who is amazing. I'm gonna cry because he's just so amazing with these kids. We had a family come up and they were not from here. They were from another country. They had never fished. I don't think the kid was a Girl Scout. It was a boy. He was not part of the scouting group at all. They just kind of stumbled upon us at the park. He gave him a pole and they're out there fishing. And the kid was like, this is the best thing ever. I mean, he had found his new thing in life, And so Mike gave him that fishing pole. Like he was like, you can keep it. And so they came up to talk to me. Mike had gone to the bathroom and he goes, we want to give it back because we don't have nowhere to fish. And I'm like, where do you live? I will find you a place to fish. And they lived in Katy. And I was like, you have all kinds of retention ponds to fish in. I wasn't going to ruin it for them with the water quality, but because you're sparking that in some young child and they're going to be outside. They're not going to be on a computer or a tablet. They might even look at a book and learn about more fishing instead of a tablet. And that's some of the stuff that we do. And we leave so fulfilled every day, after an event like that. And every girl, Mike has a poster that I caught a fish. I mean, not a frame. So we're all running around, me and some of the brigade boys, because there's a lot of different volunteer groups helping with this, making sure everybody gets a picture of their first fish. And it was so funny because these young girls pulled out a big bass. And the boys were over there like that. I said, they're not over there for them girls. Over there, you know, because somebody had a big fish and it was really funny to watch them. But those kids had a blast, you know, and it's a lot of fun to get out and do stuff like that. And as you're going through this program, you're gonna find stuff like that you're really gonna enjoy. Project Wild, we've done it at Brazos Bend State Park. We do summer camps. Many of the other groups, you know, incorporate that in, and then the aquatic one as well. Jerry did it. Didn't you do the aquatic one at once?
Yeah.
So
several times, yeah.
there's tons of stuff and you're gonna come across it. It's not gonna be on our VMS. And you just, you know, text me, email me, and I will get with you and tell you where to put it.
And you know, Melissa, you make a point that this group will learn sooner or later. And that is, you know, you're here to learn right now, but you're learning so you can go and do those things. And I don't care whether it's kids or adults. When you're sharing something you've learned in a place where the people who are with you can see what you're talking about and you see that light go on, baby, that's why we're here.
Yeah, it's great when we can, you know, put stuff in their hands and they get to go out and actually feel, see, so use all five senses, you know? It makes a big difference, especially, well, with all people, you know? There's so many, we've had so many great speakers. One of the ones I had at the Master Gardener group, Mike Shoup, he's a rose person. He said, you won't remember the picture, but you'll remember the smell. You know, how something smelled or touched, and it's true, because you just remember, have those memories. Anyway, I'll babble all day. Questions? Okay, you are good. My phone number is 281. I know, 827-3074. And just, you're gonna have to tell me who you are when you text me. So I'm like, I don't know that number. 281-827-3074. And then my email is in your folder. Text me, tell me who you are. You can even tell me what your question is. I might have to research it a little, but I'll get back to you. I run all over. And sometimes I'm working with kids, so I can't answer my phone. But when I'm done, I will get back to you and get everything taken care of. I want y'all to have fun. I don't want you to fret over being a mess. We'll walk you through everything. We'll make sure everything gets done. Okay? Responded that. I didn't even start out as a master naturalist. I started out at Brazos Bend State Park. And then there was all these master naturalists there. And so I ended up in the program from there, other like-minded people. But go to the, what program is it? Yeah, those slides.
Oh, yes, the VMS code?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me make, is it?
Could be sharing both.
That's good. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, so get the VMS code.
Yeah.
Is this crow? What do y'all think this is? So they're out, that's Gerald and some volunteers, and it looks like they are out gathering stuff for aquatic science. But where does this go?
For Gerald.
For Gerald, sorry.
RM. Yeah.
Well, Gerald can claim direct outreach because he's teaching the kids.
Field research.
Resource management would be one, if they were out gathering trash for those buckets. This could be multiple things. So,
Field butterfly, maybe?
yeah,
They're
field
getting macro
research.
invertebrates is what they're doing.
They're what?
They're doing macroinvertebrates.
So
We just
they're,
did it 2 weeks ago.
yeah, they're netting them and they're putting them in, I don't want to ruin all that. Y'all are gonna do that, but they're netting them and they're putting them in little buckets and identifying them. And then maybe recording them on iNat or something like that, which is field research. Now, if the nets were to pick up trash, that would be RM, resource management. And Daryl is doing direct outreach. Okay? What are they doing? Are they cleaning invasive species? Resource management. They're clearing invasives.
Okay.
So resource management.
Agree.
Public outreach?
Is that our astronaut?
Yes, that's our astronaut. He was speaking to us from space one time. It was pretty cool. What is this? This is a meeting. Chapter business, yes. Field research or resource management, field research, depending on what was happening. Terry's in that picture, so that's the USDA one, right, Terry?
That's, yeah, the US Forest Service, or forest, yes.
Oh, that was just the last one. Get involved, find your stuff. We'll find you stuff, don't worry. We're gonna find you lots of stuff.
Leave that one out.
Okay, leave it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Oops.
So we did go over a lot of these partner organizations when going over the different VMS opportunities. This is just a few of them. There are just too many to put up on here. And these are all available to view on our website as well. But the pollinators and pollinator gardens, we specifically have a new one that we would like Larissa and Ace to briefly provide some information about what they're doing there and what they need help with.
And notice that this is different from what's in your new folder. Those are projects, these are getting involved activities, and you can do either one.
Well, howdy, everyone. My name is Ace. This is Larissa. Larissa's doing a lot of the logistics and I'm just talking to people. So, we're interns. We got these fancy badges. We're interns, but we're working on a pollinator garden project for the Memorial Garden near Stewart Library off 105. I'm from Huntsville, not super familiar with Montgomery County. From
Same.
Montgomery, yeah,
Yeah,
so
same.
we're both from Huntsville. But essentially, there's like 1,000 square feet of project space that we're trying to convert into a pollinator garden. And the site's already been cleared of everything and prepped and it's ready to go. And this is gonna be that North Montgomery native pollinator garden with Larissa already involved. But essentially, we kind of need help. We need help in the short term and the long term. For the short term, there is a drainage issue at the site. We're gonna be putting in like a dry creek bed, but we need help putting in the dry creek bed. And I believe we have half of the materials.
Yeah, the Rotary Club that funds the Memorial Garden helps manage it, has some resources available to us. We're putting together a budget and a proposal for the rest of everything that we need. And there is some hireable labor that we can include for like digging the creek bed, carrying the rocks, the border. I need to get away from the screen. But if you would like to help with that part, if you're able-bodied enough that you want to dig or lift, please come. There's other things further along though that you can get involved with as well.
Yeah, so we need help installing the garden beds and also the plant selection.
Mhm.
I know we talked to Gary about plant selection, yeah. The planting and also initial setup of the garden beds. And then long-term, like they were kind of talking about earlier, just general maintenance of the bed. Who might live
Yes.
close or they can help with that.
Library itself.
It's like in the back of the library, there's like some sort of, it's memory garden. It's really nice back there. But we
Yes.
have a very small plot that was donated to us by the Rotary Club, maybe.
They couldn't fix or finish or do something with, because it backs up to Fernland, which is where all the old Montgomery homes are. And so we kind of jumped on it to try to have a spot out in North Montgomery so that we have a volunteer place to volunteer. And so, this is step number one, is to getting the design, and it has to go to the Rotary people, has to go to the city of Montgomery, and then once we're given the clear sign, then we can get started. We have to have all those other pieces, and Ace and Larissa are working on part of those pieces. We also have a committee, and if you want to join that committee, just send a note to Heartwood Training, and we'll get you on that list and let you know what's going on.
And everything that they do, we'll put together into an email and everyone will get that information if you're interested. If you're not interested, don't get an extra email, but if you are, then let us know. There were a bunch of us out there last week.
Yeah, it was great with the Rotary Club.
Raise your hand, you're out there. Yeah.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely need help in the short term and the long term. Definitely short term, that Dry Creek bed, getting that finished and completed, because that is a lot of work. Yeah, which we found out when we got out there. It's a lot of work. Yeah, any questions about Mia or that?
Or if you want more details about what's going into the proposal, you can reach out to us or to Shelley. She can get you in contact or put you in the email group. Until next time.
Sure. Awesome.
Just wanted to show you two quick things on here. Let me go back to. Okay, I wanted to show you a couple of things that Melissa kept talking about, the calendar and everything. I just wanted to show you really quick what the calendar looks like. A Heartwood chapter. And you go to the calendar, and if you pick one of these events and look at it, open it up, it should, and you hit the read more. In that description, it should down towards the bottom tell you what the code is. So this one is VMS RM other locations, blah, blah, blah. So you can always use a calendar as your resource to find out a code. And then once you do that a few times, then you can figure out what your other codes are. The other thing I wanted to show you here is there might be, in our description, we told you how many classes we'd like you to be in person for. And the reason for that is because a lot of times there's things we do in the class, like during the plant class, you will identify something about a plant. In the snake class, we pass around snakes and turtles and things like that. So it's really awesome to be in class. The bird person that's towards the end is a fan. She's one of the best bird guides I've ever listened to. And she does all sorts of cool things, and it's just not the same on Zoom. So if you can be in class, it's awesome. We know there's times you can't, so we're okay with doing a few Zooms besides the ones that are Zoom only. And then we know that there's a couple of times maybe that you might not be able to do Zoom or be in the class. So you're allowed to do 2 sessions that you watch the YouTube video of the class. So where do you find that? Under the Heartwood chapter, you go into Media, PowerPoint slideshows. And right here, there's a link that says view and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you go to playlists, there isn't yet, but there will be a playlist like this one for 2024 training. And every class will be video. We're doing a video of the Zoom. And if you give me about a week, this class will be on there as well. So if you need to go in, you need to find a link to something, usually at the end, I will, well, that's not
I don't know if you can tell, but.
yeah,
I
so
definitely
it's
can
a
tell it right
totally
here,
live
right
class.
here.
And at the end of it, I will often put a slide that has, there'll be the slides that the people show, but if there's questions that people asked, I'll often put a little extra slide in there that says, here's those links. So, and you can do 2 of those. And the reason for only being able to do 2 is the state really, really, really wants you to be involved in a question and answer session with the speakers so that you learn everything you can. And you have this chance to interact with the speakers. And if you're doing it on just watching YouTube, you really don't have that chance. But there's that option out there as well. So if you give me a week, this class will be out there.
All right, so
And she's really good at doing that.
I believe the last order of business, is to select a representative, a class representative, that will be responsible for attending the board meetings. They are virtual, once a
First Wednesday of the month.
So, I do need a volunteer. All right, Ace. All right. Class representative.
Everybody in agreement?
Yes.
All right, does anybody have any questions? Anything they'd like to add?
So one other comment is our schedule says that we're gonna go till 12:30. We're obviously not gonna go till 12:30, but you can claim 4.5 hours because we told you to be here until 12:30.
And so you got 4.5 hours to do the whole turn training.
Oh, yeah. So Lisa Houston, our chapter president, is gonna say a few words and then you can go, it sounds like. I'll use a few more of those minutes. So, thank you, Ace. That was on my list. So I will get you on the board invites. And so that first Wednesday, you will get an invite to the board meeting. So excellent. And anybody can attend the board meeting. So if you want to see what goes on at a board meeting, all you got to do is just email me at heartwoodpress@gmail.com. I think it's in the book. I hope it's in the book. And let me know so I can send you the link as well. It's not, earth shattering, but you want to join and see what's going on? Absolutely. I loved Gwen's talk, and some other people have said this too. I really felt like when I came in, I was going to have to be a specialist in something. And I've never been that. I've always been a jack of all trades and I want to know everything. So when I jumped in, I went way overboard and I started volunteering at way too many things, as I was telling Gary earlier. So be careful. Go out there and test everything, but find out what you like. As you saw, the list of our opportunities is just mind-boggling. This chapter is very, very fortunate to have as many partners and opportunities as we do. It's kind of good news, bad news. The good news is you have all these things to do, but the bad news is we get really separated and scattered, right? And so we like to have opportunities to come together. I hope you will be able to come to the chapter meetings. Those are really a good time to get to know everyone in the chapter. We typically have something on the order of 35 to 40 people in the room. They are Zoom. You can zoom in on those, but that's a good way to come in and start meeting other people and finding out other opportunities. I think Ashley mentioned, this is our 20th anniversary this year. So we've got a lot of things going on. And if, as you can see, you can be on committees and get volunteer time. Some people are doing that already. If you want to help with one of those projects, just let me know. We're doing everything from planning an anniversary celebration later in the year. We're working to potentially open the Sweet Leaf Trail. We actually scoped it yesterday, so there's going to be some work out there. We're working on a historical timeline, so that's more the data thing that Melissa talked about. So I'm kind of engrossed in data right now. What else are we doing? We have a communications committee, very important to make sure that we get the word out and publicize everything that we're doing this year. There's some other things. So if you're interested in doing anything like that, just come talk to me and I'll tell you what we're doing. We, need more than just one person leading those efforts. We need other people helping. So just let me know. Yes, ma'am.
After your startup, you can learn VMS.
Yes. This is true.
That's every time. Melissa, how many years have you done it now? Me?
Since Jennifer ran away screaming.
I mean, I did it before the thing for like 2 years and I was done and Jennifer did it.
But
huge
okay,
and
in the beginning, there was only 60 people logging hours. We're now over 200 people in this chapter.
But they were people who wouldn't fill out anything on the computer and.
Yeah.
It's gotten better.
Yeah. No, VMS is actually a very interesting point. So every committee or people that you saw a person for, that can be a committee. Right now, it's a committee of one. So Melissa is a committee of one. And so if there's other people that want to learn the volunteer management system, that's an opportunity. We have a training committee, obviously. We have a communications committee, but programming, outreach, all these other things that you see, if that's something you're interested in and you want to work on that committee, I'm sure that committee of one would love to have it. So committee work works for hours as well. Chapter business, a good way to get your hours. And I think that's it. Just wanted to let y'all know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's it. Thank you. We'll see you at the next class.